it being exactly 5 o'clock, we will call to order this Board of Selectmen regular meeting for Wednesday, August 13th. First item on the agenda is the first Selectmen remarks. I just wanted to start by saying we do have a new police chief, for those who may not be aware of it. Our former deputy chief, Ron Smith, has been appointed as the new chief of police here in Woodbridge by our Board of Police Commissioners. So Ron has already been sworn in. We may have something else that goes a little more ceremonial, but we're looking at that right now, see if that's something he wants to do. But also, the community center construction continues. We are still very optimistic that that'll be done by the end of this year, or hopefully towards the end of the fall, with any luck. So that continues, and as we were just commenting on, the sidewalk work here at the town center continues. And for those who may have seen the New Jersey barriers in front of the town hall, that's because of the walk here at the town hall being replaced with new curbs, because the curbs had been uneven and broken, the previous curbs, so the grant did include that, and that's being cared for. And we're also doing some work that leads to the police department, where that needed some work as well, so we've also extended it to that as well. The next steps after this concrete work is done is for them to put in the light posts that are in those. Again, those there will be new ones put along the new sidewalks, obviously, but they'll also be replacing the existing ones to match those. And those are the dark skies, dark night type of lighting. Additionally, I wanted to mention that the building officer charge has been drafted. If you remember, we were appointing two building officers, Nigel Light and Dwight Rowland. The charge, after having met with them and gone over it with them, that'll be mailed out to you probably at the end of this week after I see them on Friday or Monday, but you should be receiving that next week just for your review, and we can talk about that at our next meeting. Also, for your review, well, I'll get into that when we get into Lucy Street a little bit. So, this being August in the summer, we do not have on the agenda our normal spot for our superintendent of schools. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Director of Finance report.
Thank you. The first item on the report is to accept a state grant of $5,000 for the restoration of documents in the town clerk's office. This is an annual grant for those of you who've been on, remember from last year and prior years. And in keeping with last year, the grant will be used to restore volumes 6 through 9 of our tax books. So there's some great historic documents down there. Yeah, if you ever want to go see them, I recommend that. And so that's the request.
Is there a match requirement for that?
No, there's no match requirement. We just are using the funds and then supplementing with a budget line, which was for that specific purpose.
Tony, how many volumes are there? How many?
How annual? You know?
How annual is this?
Don't you?
That are not digital already.
How many years out are we
It's like
projecting?
17.
So it's the original records that are being restored. Everything is available in the electronic system already, but it's the actual paper
Right.
documents that they have to
Sure.
treat.
No,
because we have to
understood.
keep them forever.
I'm just wondering. So we've done this, and you noted that we've been doing it annually. So I'm wondering, how many more years should we be planning? Because this is great that we get the $5,000 grant, but we also have our expenditure. So how many years in the future do we expect to be
Something like another 100.
doing this?
Right.
What are we up to?
Well, it looks like there was a list here for a bid for doing 17 of them, so I'm assuming
Right.
it's at least that.
That's correct.
Right, and is that the remainder? I guess.
Well, that gets us to 1856.
Yeah.
How close do you want to get?
I don't know. Do we need to? I don't know.
No, those
Yeah,
are
like
all-
they
I
went to
don't know about you, but I remember those.
It's definitely a
I do.
Like, what's the value of this?
So there's a requirement that you keep the records. So having
Dating
electronic
back to the
versions
1800, forever.
from the beginning of the town. So 1784.
Okay.
Particularly
The rest are in
deeds
New
and
Haven.
things of that nature.
I'm sorry.
Deeds and things, those
I
types
see.
of
Okay.
We
Okay.
should
Right.
expect it to be annual for a while.
241 years.
yes.
Sure.
We got
Yeah.
a while to go.
New
And we
Haven-
could
New Haven picks up
certainly
everything before
just do the
1780.
amount the grant pays for. That's an option.
Well,
And how much would that cover? how many volumes?
So it's 5,000, so it depends how big the volume is.
Oh, it says, I'm sorry,
Right.
I'm looking at it
In
right
this
now.
case, it's 6 through 9.
So maybe
One,
it would only get us through
Yeah.
volume 6 and 7.
right.
So I'd like to make a motion that we fully fund this. It was in our annual budget request. They had presented this during the budget, so I think it's important work, so I'll make the motion that we approve this.
Second.
Any other questions, discussions, thoughts? All in favor? Motion carries. Unanimous.
The second item is to request a bid waiver to use a state contractor, Northeast Communications Electrical LLC, to complete the cabling of the community center. This is a state contract pricing, and Vancord, our IT consultant, will oversee the project. And the project cost is in the project budget, so this is not a funding issue, it's just a purchasing issue.
I'll make the motion to grant the bid waiver request.
I'm sorry, can you just clarify?
Just get a second and then
I
we'll,
think Sheila just.
Second,
all
thank
right,
you.
Sorry. It's not a funding, but it's a.
It's, what I mean is we're not looking for additional funding for it.
Okay.
It's already in the $2 million budget that we have, or the $2.5 million budget
Yeah, do
we
you know,
have.
so actually, are you willing to clarify for this project what the town is paying versus the grant?
So the town, we used ARP funds in this project.
Yep.
And we used a $2 million grant in this project. I believe the town just paid for some of the design costs at the beginning of the grant. Other than that, we have not had any town involvement.
Okay, so,
So that was prior fiscal year operating
Right.
expenses.
Right.
So not even in this.
It's not in
last
this year,
budget.
no. That was
Okay,
from
thank you.
2 years ago, yeah, 2 years ago.
Our board.
okay. And this doesn't set us back in the grant at all, like this cost
So
was
it's going to be
antici-
using our contingency, part of our contingency, so that would, it's probably less money that we would have. We haven't encountered any major items, although we've had a few contingency items come up so far. So when you have an old building, there are things that come up that we didn't anticipate.
Particularly one that burned down.
Wait, Tony, didn't you just say this is covered by the $2 million
It is, there's a
grant?
contingency budget within the grant.
Within the grant?
Yeah, in other words, when you
Grant
have.
contingency.
Well, grant contingency.
Okay.
When you have
That's
a
our-
project that's $2.5 million, the bid may be on, the cost of the construction may only be 2.3 million, and you have a contingency within the grant.
So it's state money?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Or federal.
Or federal,
yeah,
correct.
federal.
Correct.
Okay.
It's not our contingency.
Okay, thank
additional
you.
dollars
Good.
not earmarked for specific items in case there is
In
need
case there's a
for it.
problem.
Through the grant?
Right.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
So the only struggle will be, that's less money for furnishings in the building. So they'll have to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and we could also furnish over time,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is
You
for
could
IT,
absolutely
like
do
this
that.
is.
You have to wire it for IT.
This is important.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
more
right.
important than like a couch.
Right, exactly.
Tony, were fixtures also part of that? Not sure how much money we're going to have. for
Correct,
that. So-
yeah.
So fixtures, like,
Furniture and fixtures were part of the contingency
right,
budget.
so to be determined.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
We're putting a budget together for that, and we'll see how much we have left in the
Yeah,
grant
that'd be
to
helpful.
pay, and then how much was remaining, and when to fund that, or how to fund it, or if to fund it.
Okay.
We have a motion and second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a sustainable CT application update, and hello, Nick.
Hey, Nick.
Allison, I think you can provide this update.
Yes, so Woodbridge was certified bronze in 2018, and sustainable CT certifications are good for a period of 3 years. So it was our intention to recertify for bronze, but in our work on it, it was pretty clear that we were able to go and kind of go to try to achieve a higher certification. So for clarification, a bronze certification requires one equity toolkit, which is a narrative about one of the actions we've done that includes community feedback. So for example, we've used Earth Day as one. We've used some of the improvements we've made to communications from resident feedback, like our newsletter, the mailed one, bringing it back, especially after the newspaper. For silver, you need 3, so we do have 3 completed and submitted. You need 500 points for silver. We're gonna submit Monday with 425 out of 500 points. So they will give us a bronze certification, with the goal of in April when our POCD is done, and the town center sidewalks, those will both supplement the outstanding 75 points, and we will receive bronze certification in August and silver in April.
Would the POCD have been enough to bring us to the 500, or would it have been just a little
Yeah,
under?
between the POCD could have given us up to 30 or 40 points, so we would have been close. Where there was a couple of things, I mean, we kind of pulled back on some other things of pushing through. We'll have probably well over 500, but we know we'll hit there for April, so.
And it's just engagement, it's not like sustainable measure?
No,
So, like,
everything that we got
would the
points.
sidewalk project
So
count?
when that's finished, that
But
will
not
count.
that it's-
But it has to
okay.
be finished. Additionally, we actually received quite a few points for our bicycle classes, which was very
Oh, great.
exciting, so that was a big thing. Complete Streets is another one, so as we progress with the Lots of grant down in the business district, there's plenty of things that we just have to wait on, that will continue to fuel, and push us further, but.
And can you speak to the benefit of having this certification?
So, being certified by Sustainable CT, it is recognized throughout the state of Connecticut and with different grant organizations. There's partners that work with Sustainable CT. So being recognized and certified does allow you to partner with different organizations. It allows you, there's some additional funding that can be made available for certain projects going forward, so.
The most significant value that I see in it is the actual steps that you take in order to attain those particular metrics. So, for example, a great example is a bike. You see that you can get points for this, and you actually
Do it.
execute on it and make it happen. And there's a lot of the points that we received as a result of taking action. So there's a lot of talk, there continues to be a lot of talk about them possibly tying it to grant, to make it a stronger case for you to get grants, but right now it's not. So it really, the value comes in terms of executing and delivering on those action items that you
Yeah,
go
and
through it.
certain action items alone set you up for additional grant funding. So certified local government is a program that we, is on their list of things that you can do. And if you go through that process, which includes great things like having a forestry committee and our register of historical documents. And when you get through this process, there is a portion of federal forestry funds and historical funds that you can access grant-wise. So some of the actions qualify you. And then there's other goals that we're working towards, like a municipal energy plan for all of our buildings, that will also continue to get us points and things like that.
Allison has been working on this for quite some time with the many different departments that we have, because it's amazing how many of our different departments and personnel get involved in getting this and what we actually can accomplish and get points for. And I'd also like to give a shout out to SCROG, our Council of Governments, who were able to provide us is it an intern? I don't want to say an intern. if it's
This
not.
would not have been possible without Thalia, who was provided to me from SCROG. She was.
And it wasn't just a
absolutely-
matter of helping in terms of doing things, which was really necessary because it does take a lot of time, but she was also knowledgeable about the different processes and the different ways in which you can kind of shortcut or utilize different elements in order to get to where you can actually get a certification. So we're pleased we'll be recognized when the Sustainable CT does their next
Who is
convention.
who is Sustainable CT? Are they government? Or what are they? Who are they?
They're state funded, and I'm not sure if you have any additional information on that, Allison, but
It is. I don't have like. It's a community. It's crowdfunding. It's a group. It is a state organization that works to help facilitate municipalities towards working and building more sustainable programming and policies, and they help guide and direct that, and they have community match programs that are all part of it. So it's building a network for municipalities to connect with resources to gain more sustainable policy.
It's a 501c3. right,
Yeah.
nonprofit organization.
They regard it more as an initiative, a statewide initiative. You know, the program, Sustainable CT program, is more of an initiative to get the municipalities to recognize and get municipalities to.
Is there state dollars in this? Are there tax dollars paying for this, or is it just all
Good question.
fundraising? Or do we know?
I can't say for sure, David, but I'm sure that there's,
It's a voluntary certification program, independently funded. Municipal effort provides a ranging menu of best practices. Sustainable CT also provides opportunity for grant funding to help communities promote economic well-being, enhance equity while respecting the finite capacity of the natural environment.
Thank
It's really a resource. Like Mika said, like when you go through the process and you look at all the actions in which you can gain certification as a town, it is a really comprehensive like roadmap to the little things you have to start to get a municipal energy plan, right? Like something I know you guys have talked about, and the steps to certify for that are the roadmap. Like one, you start benchmarking, and so we've been signed up with Energize CT, and we're benchmarking our energy use, and then ASHRA energy audits, which I know Tony and Mika and Brad are working on with UI to get those in. So it really helps give you some direction to achieve the like bigger goals that most municipalities have.
says it is funded primarily by private grants with significant contributions coming from the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation, Common Sense Fund, and Hampshire Foundation. It also receives funds from the Green Bank and the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut, along with community match fund contribution match donations.
Interesting.
It's not too dissimilar, the model from like Tree City USA, and which offers programs for municipalities to get a Tree City designation, which incentivizes towns to have an urban tree canopy plan, an inventory, a tree ordinance, and it like boasts, and then you can hang a sign in your town that says we're a Tree
And
City.
all of those things also get you points towards
Yes,
the search
they-
system.
yeah, I think
Right,
they
the
model-
tree inventory, there's quite a few under those categories, so.
Yeah.
When we were awarded the bronze, we got a tree. but
To
it-
plant?
It has since died.
Oh,
Sadly, when our bronze certification wore off, the tree was also expired. But it was Strategy 7, Tactic A, Goal 2 of our strategic plan for this.
good reference.
Great that it's getting done.
So,
Do we need to vote on that, or just?
no, this is just to be aware of, and once we receive the certification, obviously, we'll make that announcement and put it out to the public as well, but
We're
one,
hitting the submit button on Monday, so then I will let you guys.
Thanks for your time on that.
so, thank you, Allison. Next item on our agenda is a Lucy Street Warner Village update. Just wanted to give everyone some additional information as to what's going on at this point in time. We had started out, I should say not we, but rather we're the property owner, but the landlord had started out considering 5 different groups in terms of taking over the lease. We pretty much ruled out 2 right away. One of them didn't stay in the process, so that left 2. And since then, it appears that, based on meetings with the owner, Mr. Pone and Chaffa, that we're down to 1. It looks like it's New Samaritan is the name of the group. We don't know, they're still under, significant negotiations that have to happen. But they are at least progressing in terms of those negotiations. One of the things that needed to happen was obviously they needed to make sure there was a capital needs assessment done. So any prospective lease taker over would have to be aware of whatever that capital needs assessment, whoever did take over the lease. So that's been done. So that's a positive sign in that they're still working together and still negotiating. Mr. Capone, next steps would be to negotiate directly with New Samaritan in terms of whatever arrangements they want to make along those lines. So far, we've not seen any reason to not support the New Samaritan as the entity that assumes the lease. We'll continue to look at that just to make sure that we do as much due diligence as possible. And We've also, Nick, as I think mentioned previously, we have put together an actual document that we now need to review with Mr. Capone in regards to tax credits that we were talking about. Now, again, I wanted to mention that after having conversations with Chaffa and the owner and the entities involved, it was felt that if the town made an effort to help with some funding in regards to some of the things that were immediately needed at the site, and there are many things that are immediately needed there, that it would be a strong show of good faith along with being a more immediate means by which to bring some much needed repairs to the site, because there is just simply not a lot of money available right now from the Mr. Pone's standpoint or Chaffa's standpoint for them to do very much. So we've worked out some language that we feel is adequately constrained to assure that should we proceed in this direction, the dollars would be utilized only to make improvements at that site. And Nick, I don't know if you want to explain any more along those lines.
Yeah, that's the general concept. The document that Mika just referred to is technically called a tax abatement agreement. It would result in, if we're all in agreement, it would result in a tax abatement for this property that would typically be paid by, and has been paid by Mr. Capone, and would continue to be paid by any income-coming group. That, the specific amount of tax relief would be, as Mika stated, tied directly to how those funds could be used for these deferred maintenance items, probably some of these items that are listed on this capital needs assessment. So yeah, that's the framework. If you want this tax relief, you can use the money to fix what everyone says they think needs to get fixed. The one other piece that would involve this board beyond approving entering into the agreement itself would be for the ordinance subcommittee technically to enable this agreement on a go-forward basis. Obviously, we're talking about this specific property, but in order to possibly do this for other properties that might rise to the level as well, we have to pass an ordinance. It's a simple one-page document that says we have a state law, a state statute that authorizes municipalities at a local level to enter into these tax abatement agreements for specific purposes like we're contemplating here. But the legislative body here, the Board of Selectmen, first has to pass an ordinance that authorizes that to occur. So that's where we're at.
So I have a little bit of a memory. The last time we talked about this, we also brought up the idea that it might be a tax lien that they were able to do capital improvements with, so that when they change hands again, it would be something that might get paid back to the town. Was that explored any further? Is it still possible to explore?
Putting some sort of loan as a lien, no, we can't do that.
We can't.
We can't just lien, I mean, this is how you get there. There's no mechanism to just say, hey, we're loaning you money and we're putting a lien on your property in exchange for that.
So rather than any money transacting, we're just not charging them tax. Is that?
That's
what you're
correct.
saying? All right.
That would be the mechanism for giving them available surplus funding to complete these improvements.
And they would have to demonstrate that the dollars are being used specifically for those improvements, that up until the amount that this encompasses.
And if they don't satisfy their reporting obligation to prove that that's what these funds have been used, they owe us
some
taxes back. Yeah.
So who monitors that? And yeah, is that us, the board? Is it like who ensures and is checking that that's where the money is going?
Tax collector, I assume. Tax collector?
Whoever makes the most sense. I mean,
It would be staff.
Town staff.
Town staff would do that in terms of, it's not to say that the Board of Selectmen can't make it a priority for for us
Yeah.
to also
No.
make sure that we follow and we watch it. But
I'm not suggesting
but,
one or the other,
yeah.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, it would be town staff
the
who would,
process.
who would monitor it. And that could include, for example, the tax collector or tax assessor or something along those lines. But
Seems to make sense.
So this isn't a one-time,
this is a one-time,
just the first year that,
it's a one-time situation, correct?
so it's an abatement that if it's an ordinance, it gets revoked, or how does it?
No, an abatement allows for the town to enter into these types of agreements with property owners. So
For whatever duration we want to enter into.
that's set forth per the terms of the agreement, right? There's no specifics in this ordinance. It just says, yes, you can enter into these types of agreements at the terms you want. There's a couple conditions to that in the statute that allows for this, namely that the abatement has to be used for housing. In this case, the statute that we're referring to is for improvements of actual dwelling units for housing. So that's, what the legislature provided us, and that's what we're trying to make work here for the purposes we need. But otherwise, there is, like I said at the last meeting, I think, there is, no, as much as we think it might be a good idea, I mean, I said it in the context of, tax relief to some of the residents that were affected by the recent revale, but we cannot just give money to a party as much as we think it makes sense unless the state law specifically authorizes us to do it. And so this is the mechanism for doing it. So what I've contemplated and explained to Mika is we can get to this idea that is being contemplated by establishing a number for how much those fixes are going to cost, and then we back into that number through this tax abatement agreement. And yeah, it would be limited to like 1 year of taxes. And then we could set a timeline for when we would expect the construction to occur by with, check-in deadlines, things like that. I mean, we could get as specific as we want in terms of, supervising this and checks and balances and reporting. It's really, our discretion under the terms of the agreement that both parties would need to consent to.
And is that limited to properties that we have a ownership interest in? Again, we own the land and they have a land lease. So would it necessarily be limited to that, or it could be any?
Could be any property.
Okay.
Could we limit it if we so chose, Nick,
The ordinance?
the ordinance?
No.
Okay.
So one of the assisted livings, for example, for any reason decided to come to us to say, we want to do something here and we'd like a tax abatement to help us do it.
They would have to put that in writing, and then that would be your
we'd have to
call.
consider it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So we don't yet know what the dollar amount of the improvements is.
I don't know that
And
for sure.
and do we know how much they would have available to them through the abatement program?
The
Like,
tax,
are they
the tax,
aligning?
the amount of tax is approximately $40,000, $42,000, something
Okay.
along those lines. It's not a significant amount of
Yeah.
money.
So
It's- so the-
I doubt it would cover everything.
No, oh my God, no.
but-
No, we're looking for some really basic type
Basic,
things
like-
like the laundry room.
Yeah.
Where that is just a bane of my existence in terms, the town of, the residents, when they've exhausted when they go to the landlord and they don't get they don't get service, they bring it to us. They bring it to the town. And we generally reach out to the landlord and just say, we are the property owner. So we have him in a situation where he's looking for something. So we try to leverage what we can in terms of getting him to make some moves on some of the things that are very, very basic, like laundry, like washing machine and dryer. So there's also fences that are rotted and falling. There's sidewalks that need to be leveled and things of that nature that go along with this. So the 40,000 can address some immediate, mostly aesthetic, but also quality of life. Because right now, if the laundry room isn't working, they have to either walk or find somebody to give them a ride to the laundromat. And, because you have to wash your clothes. So it's, there's some concerns there. And again, one of the reasons for this is because of the nature of the negotiations between all the parties involved. And this is the town saying, okay, yeah, we're a part of this and we're we're looking to try to improve the situation as quickly and as well as we can. The negotiations with the person who takes over the lease is a long negotiation. It's not something that happens in a matter of months. It may take a couple of years. So this is a way to get something done in the meantime while everything is worked out. The hope is, and one of the benefits of New Samaritan being the entity that's looking at this, is that they have a lot of experience working with CHAFA on tax credit programs that would also bring in an influx of capital dollars when this whole thing is said and done. It would likely require that we extend our lease. We're about halfway into a 30-year lease, a little more than halfway, I think now. I think it was early 90s is when this started, so.
50
a 60-year lease. So would probably include that in terms of extending it so that they can put in some capital and make some of the real required repairs that are necessary or improvements that are necessary. So.
Mika, since we're the landowner, is there any type of maybe like economies of scale, like if there's sidewalks that need to be fixed, we're doing the sidewalks here. I know they're two completely different projects, but is there anything that the town can sort of help with, or they can get folded into one of our projects since that type of work is already being done?
The issue has been funding, that there is, unless we're willing to fund
Right.
it. Yeah,
Got it.
that's been the concern. But in answer to your question, we haven't really looked at that because of that issue.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
Is there a deadline for this lease landlord okay.
There is not.
I was just going to ask about timeline for this, so you're still working, still negotiating, so there's
Yeah.
nothing for the board
The,
to approve. But
No, there is not right now.
do we need the ordinance in place to do this?
I'm sorry?
Do we need the ordinance in place
In
to,
order to proceed with it, yes,
so the ordinance can start
correct,
that process, and then by the time you're done negotiating, hopefully catch up?
correct. The,
And then, but ultimately, after an ordinance is through the process, which takes some time, and this negotiated deal, is it the current year's taxes that are abated or next year's?
I'm not
Depends on
clear
the
that,
timing.
Sheila. I'm really not, I believe it's the next year's taxes, because obviously they've already paid half of this year's taxes.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
it's whatever is logistically gonna make
Right.
sense at the time.
So then the impact's not until the next budget?
Mhm.
Okay.
And Tony and I have talked about that in terms of what that means from our perspective. Any additional questions? More to come. Thank you. Let me ask a question before I jump to the next agenda item. Is the board okay with us proceeding in this way?
In the way of the abatement program?
Yes.
I have no objection.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested to see the details of
Right.
what's getting negotiated, obviously, because, I mean, I would like to make sure that if we're freeing up money for them, what's coming of it. So I'm sure that's all going to get worked out, so.
What I'll do is, Nick, I think we can send out the draft at this point, and so we'll send out the draft agreement so you can kind of look at that and get a sense for exactly what it'll encompass, and then, next time we get together, we can have more information. And certainly the ordinance team should have that.
Absolutely. And it'll take time on the ordinance, putting it together, and then calling for a public hearing, and
Right.
voting on it.
The
So
process
there's
itself.
a few months,
I've,
at least, to make that happen.
Yeah, the residents are, obviously, they stay in tune with this very closely. So I've tried to set the expectation that it'll be way quicker than, the new person taking over the lease and getting that capital influx, but it's not going to be, it's still going to be months. So, in the meantime, I've talked to Chaff and some other, I've tried to see what we can do about just pushing a little bit as far as things like the laundry are concerned.
I was gonna say, a couple months to not have access
No,
to
you-
laundry is a
We're working,
hardship.
we're working on that,
Yeah.
on the side as well, so.
Glad to hear it.
So I guess maybe that brings up another question, which is like fair rent committee or commission.
Does bring up another question.
Yeah, because people are paying rents, not getting what they think they're getting. They could put their rent into escrow and hire an attorney or something, but that seems like quite a lot to do. But if we had a fair rent commission, it's an option that the town of Woodbridge could set up.
It's also something that SCROG is looking at. We've talked about it at SCROG specifically because the HB 5002 had something along those lines included in it as part of it. So if, town as small as ours and towns smaller than us, for them to have their own fair rent committee
Yeah.
seems a little much. So they were thinking of centralizing it through the COG, through the Council of Government. So that's something that they'll continue to take a look at to see exactly what can be done, because right now we don't have that. So they don't have the recourse to go to a group and say,
Yeah.
what can you do to help us out here? Can we organize? Can we do something?
So with current statute, I don't think we're prohibited, but it is we're not required because we're too small. But I wondered if it might be something we could assign to the housing committee, really, because they're interested in housing people who currently live here and having problems with their housing. Could they be, or could our ethics committee be our fair housing committee or our fair rent committee? Because they don't often meet, but they are people that are serving in that capacity, and ethics and fairness seem like they might go together. I don't know if it's possible.
They have housing, I don't know if they have that type of,
Yeah, so maybe
Those
it's
types
maybe
of-
it's a combination of our housing committee and the ethics committee working together.
I don't know, I don't want to call it a challenge, but one of the items to consider in that is what recourse you truly have. What can you do as a committee? The Housing Authority, for example, has some authority that it has some capability to there could be a consequence to landlords. I don't know, and it's something that we would need to look at, because that's when we broached it with SCROG and in terms of the different municipalities, it's what can be done in a situation when something like this, the washing machines aren't working. So what recourse is there? So, but it is something I agree, Sheila, is worth considering and looking at. And it's something that we should get ahead of the curve on, since a state proposal was already put into place that would require something along those lines. It's likely that it'll come up again. So we might as well see about that, so.
I could just dovetail on that really quickly. Sheila, you're correct. We are not obligated to have a fair rent commission. Some of the larger municipalities are. And to your point, Meek, but that doesn't preclude us from establishing one. That being said, if we do that, and I'm not positive on this, but to your point, Mika, fair rent commissions have real power where they're established to make final binding decisions. If a landlord in town is charging X for rent, this committee has the legal authority to say, no, that's too much, or something along those lines. So it's a calculus that this board should certainly have, but it's consistent with what I've heard in other smaller municipalities similarly sized to Woodbridge, where, does it really make sense at this small, this local of a level? Maybe, maybe not. None of my comparable towns have in fact established a fair rent commission, but I agree, the topic is not going away. The bill that you mentioned, Mika, 5002, ultimately didn't pass, or it wasn't approved by the governor at least, but yeah, this is not going to go away, so.
Yeah, and I would think even though we're small, I think our relationship with Warner Village is, and the fact that they call up town hall when they have a problem. So we'd be serving those people, I think, tremendously, because it could help protect them from unfair rent hikes.
Right. And there could be,
Well,
Yeah.
In this
Which they might
case,
face.
the landlord is continuing to get rents and presumably making a profit and not reinvesting it in the facility, so
something should be able to be done.
So,
Yeah.
what's that?
Something should be able to be done.
Right.
I think.
But, so,
Well, we-
but on the other hand, we're kind of rewarding them by
We're rewarding him
giving them money, a rebate.
by putting that cost onto the towns,
Yep.
the town people, because that $47,000 of tax abatement will have to be made up by the rest of the town's
Right.
tax, that our taxes will have to reflect that. So it may be a small amount of money, $10 for every household or whatever it is, but it's still us paying for what really is the landlord's obligation
Yep.
while he continues to collect rents and a profit. I don't like that, but I certainly feel more obligated to the residents who are there as voters and citizens of our town. But we really ought to have there should be some way to put teeth into this for the perspective of what the landlord's getting out of it.
Understand, David, I think the greater benefit, when you look at it from a long-term perspective, becomes our ability to negotiate with Jaffa and the new person who's taken over the lease in such a way as it would enable the capital dollars, the amount of capital dollars that would be required to really do the work that's necessary into the building as a whole. And that's a program that's has some degree of subjectivity into it. So our demonstrating that
Well, Champa can't like being a slum landlord,
they don't.
right? I mean,
They don't.
basically that's what it's turning into. If the services are not being kept up and there are deteriorating conditions that should be fixed, because these are people who live in our town, they shouldn't be forced to live under bad circumstances, so.
And the reason, as I said before, from my perspective, I agree with you. I understand that, and believe me, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But at the same token, it leaves a worse taste in my mouth to not see anything done at all.
Yeah.
And we're negotiating, we're trying to get something done. We know it won't happen very quickly, so in the meantime, as you say, there's our residents who are there who are taking the brunt of it. So this is a means by which we can do something quickly, and the town is saying, okay, we're willing to do something. It's not a lot, but it's something that would benefit the residents and improve the situation and improve our position in terms of being able to do what we would like to see done on a long-term basis with Jaffa.
And Champa doesn't have any recourse to go after the landlord for anything.
Certain degree they are. I'm hoping, I just talked to them today about the washing machines, and I'm hoping that they can leverage something to that. So we'll see. We'll see what recourse they have.
I mean, it would be maybe a good compromise if our tax abatement were a lever for that.
Right. So maybe if we proceed with investigating a fair rent commission at the same time, they'll understand that, because we did have a prior person who was interested in assuming this, owning this property, make statements in public that he was going to jack up the rent. And we wouldn't want that to happen. So if we at least start pursuing a fair rent commission, we make it clear that's not going to be happening in Woodbridge, because we're going to have a mechanism.
These units, it should be known, along the lines that just kind of struck a note with me. These units make up the largest majority of our affordable units here in our town. We have about some people say 1.2, some people say 1.7, whatever it is, less than 1.5%. These 30 units make up the bulk of the 40 some odd that we have. There's only 6 of them that are deeded restricted.
Right.
The remaining 24 are below market in terms of the rent. The reason that
Currently.
there hasn't been capital the reason maintenance has been deferred to the degree that it is because his strategy has been to keep the rent low, to keep people in their apartments, keep the rent below market. So from a profit standpoint, I'm sure he's making something, otherwise he wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
But he's not making a significant profit as he could, because there's 24 units there that could be market rate.
Right. That's the
There's
current
one of
owner.
I'm sorry?
That's the current owner.
Correct.
So
That's correct.
other people looking to come in might not have that same
As a matter of
philosophy.
fact,
Well, it
the
looks
other
like-
people coming in would likely make all of the units deed restricted for
Oh.
affordable.
This one that you're negotiating
Correct.
with. Yeah.
Correct.
It says here that they're the foremost nonprofit provider of affordable housing
Right.
with supportive services in Connecticut and Massachusetts.
So, yeah, they're,
So they're a not-for-profit company.
and so the next question, like, this is like the degree of, the next question was, well, wait a second, if we make them all affordable, we don't know who there is above the line. So does that mean people have to move? And you need CHAFA, and you need them to agree that they would grandfather people who are there until such time they should leave, and then, the next tenant has to qualify. And that's part of the negotiation. So again, that's part of the reason we put a little skin in the game, and it seems like, yeah, we understand, we need you to do some things, and we're willing to do some things as well.
But we would not be entering into an agreement about this program until we know for sure who's buying it. Because if the current owner could then turn around and say, well, I'm not going to go with New Samaritan, I'm going to go with this other person, and that person does want to increase the rents. So we would sort of time this all out, right?
To a certain degree, Sheila, I'm very close to the situation, so sometimes you lose your objectivity a little bit, but I would be inclined to do it regardless, just because I know what they're going through to the degree that I do. And I don't see it necessarily being tied, but I do know that he's running out of options. He's running out of time, he's running out of options. There are leverages that I believe Chaffet can put in place. I don't,
Yeah. So
they
we'll have
haven't
more
told me
details.
anything,
Yeah.
right, so, but
A lot more
it's
details.
something that I would look to do for the residents and for the overall process.
Not to open a whole nother can of worms for tonight, but Sheila had suggested maybe simultaneously exploring through ordinance this option of the fair rent. Is there a precedent for that being a subcommittee or a subcommission, if that even exists, of the once we bring the housing committee into as a commission? Because I'm wondering if there's opportunity while we're still working on that ordinance. I don't know, I don't want to rock the boat too much in terms of all the legwork the ordinance committee has already done, but,
It wouldn't be a subcommittee.
okay.
But I mean, there is a way that if this board was so inclined, we could craft, for example, the housing commission ordinance to incorporate the roles and duties and responsibilities that a fair housing commission has and is required to follow under the state law. So sure, we could bolster that. I heard Sheila mention maybe somebody from the ethics committee, if not the committee itself. I'm not so sure on that. I think, Andrea, you responded and said, well, how much do they do with housing? I mean, it would ultimately be this board's determination. But yeah, the Fair Rent Commission is very much about housing, rents, what's market rates, what's affordable rates, what are income levels in town. I mean, these are the type of folks we should be thinking about to populate that sort of a board.
It would be a power and duty, potentially.
Potentially.
So at this stage, we've already called for a public hearing on the Housing Commission ordinance as presented at the last meeting. So we did that at the last meeting.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
didn't schedule it for this meeting because there was meant to be a country club discussion as well.
Yes.
Which, when we didn't want to
we
overload
pick
our
the
account.
date?
We picked it for the September meeting, so we
Okay,
just put it,
thank you.
we put it there. So at this stage, if we were to change it, we would need to have another meeting and then approve it and
So
call
maybe
for a
it's
public
not-
hearing on that.
I mean, you
But-
could establish housing and then 2 months later add
You
to
can
the
add,
charge.
right, you can add a power and
Sure.
duty, you can amend an ordinance, but so it would take those things.
Well, I don't
Either way, it would take
I don't
time,
know
but I
enough
think it's,
to know
sure.
that that's
There's
the
there's
best
some-
path.
And
Like,
I'm in the same boat. There's some legwork that needs to be done
Yeah,
for us to
I don't
really
think we're ready.
evaluate
Yeah.
Yeah.
what can or should be done.
And the refreshed 5,002 may go
Right.
through a
There
special
might be-
session
right,
and we
there's
may
gonna
know
be
about
a-
it soon.
right, in
So
their
I
special
would say
session.
for now,
Yeah.
not make that.
But it's something I think we'll keep talking about what's possible for that.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you for your consideration on this. Our next item on the agenda is a consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone wants to discuss, or?
I did have a question about, just to do with the town property use request, so I guess if I want to talk about it, we should just pull it
Yep.
and then
I'm
talk
guessing
about
we
it.
have the same questions.
Okay,
About the dates.
so I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda after removing C, town property use request.
D, or I'm sorry, C. Thank you.
Okay. I'm like, what document are you looking at?
Would I have to remove the minutes from the agenda to make a comment about them?
Yes, you would.
All right, so that would be after.
No, you would.
So can I make a
the
motion to remove the minutes also?
I'll amend my motion.
Yeah, here
Thanks,
you go.
that
There's only
was-
A,
To
B,
do
and
nothing
C,
but, so the consent agenda is only to approve
It
tax
shouldn't be
refunds.
a big deal, but,
Yeah, that's
Thanks.
my motion.
all right, second.
Okay.
Okay. Do I have a motion so your motion was to approve them, taking those two items out?
Right.
So only approving
Is there
the
a
tax
second?
refunds.
Yeah.
Andrew, second.
Second, thank you.
Yeah.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Now, that makes the next item on the agenda the approval of minutes.
Okay. So I just wanted to say, I do think it's clear, thanks to Allison's,
Well, I missed something. Did we take the minutes out?
yes,
A
we
and C.
did.
Okay,
A and
okay,
C
that's
were
fine.
taken
Okay.
out. No.
No,
Just
I'm
B.
like,
I just wanted to make it clear to you all and to the public who have the interest in reading our minutes that my nay in the vote for the public hearing was not against having the public hearing, it was for this date, which I do think you did a great job of, but I just wanted to reinforce that for my own purposes of transparency. Yep, that's it. Not requesting a change.
Is there any
So we-
other questions related to the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
A second?
All in favor? Minutes are approved.
Thank you.
And question, the next item on the agenda is town property use requests.
So I'll make a motion to approve, but then I want to
I'll second.
have some discussion, yeah, okay.
Okay?
So for discussion, these all sound great. I'm not sure I understand, so the poetry picnic at the community gardens, and that's a lovely request letter that we received. Really speaks to the beauty of the community gardens. I'm just not sure what we would approve to do there because it envisions a picnic of some sort, and I don't know that you can have a picnic there. So is this just a preliminary sketch, or is this it? We're approving a picnic?
Yeah. Well, it also says one date or another, so I don't know if there's been any follow-up. It's at September 20th or 21 in the letter. So
Yeah.
what are we?
Is that a?
I don't know if there's been an
Okay,
update.
I suggested, or they wrote a letter to the community garden group also. And because it is on publicly owned property, the suggestion was then to also follow up with Board of Selectmen and add it with the other town property requests. They just did a poetry walk on one of the trails too. It was a guided trail walk, which was really successful. So that's why it's in this agenda, because they started with the community gardens and then asked where they should follow up with it.
As far as the dates are concerned, it could be regarded as the rain date, but also there was a Solar Sunday event
On Saturday.
on Saturday, the 20th, I believe it is. And they were hoping to see if they could combine this as part of that program, if you will.
Would also be a
And-
good idea.
Right. And so but it was originally scheduled to take place on the 21st. So they felt like they had some time to determine whether or not it would work better on the 20th or the 21st. It's one date or the other.
So I guess, can we ask them to come back in our September meeting with more details so we can approve it then? So that because.
Detail in what regard? So we can
So
tell
I
them
guess-
specifically.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're gonna do. I mean, the community gardens, at least it says, that's kind of private property. So they're not doing it inside the gardens, or are they doing it inside the gardens? Or are they doing it immediately outside the gardens, on the field?
My understanding is they're doing it at the gardens, but we can get that clarified.
Yeah.
They are doing it
So
Yeah.
there is a sign that says, please take notice, it's private property.
We're
for the
not doing
gardens.
it without the consent of those people who are engaged in the community garden. The community gardens
They are
have
already
already
okay with it.
indicated that they would be okay with it.
Oh, okay. So
So-
those are the details that I don't know anything
Mhm.
about. And then do we have, I know it says that there are guidelines for use of the property. Does it also include that area of Fitzgerald? I know we talked about the green having specific guidelines and policies and et cetera.
It's for general town property
Mhm.
is what we're doing guidelines for. As to whether or not that's, I haven't seen the final draft of the policy.
Was it,
So-
it's still being worked on?
It is still being
Okay,
worked
so
on.
it's not.
Correct.
I couldn't click the link in the document itself. It says I've read this document, but I haven't read that document, so I didn't know.
Yeah, no, it's still being, there are some items that are being worked on, and we're taking information from other towns and what they've done and things of that nature, so that's not been.
Yeah, I knew there was
Finalized.
liability,
Mhm.
things like that. And then I had just another question. I'm not sure what SACG stands for. I'm sure it's a fine and upstanding community group, but I
It's
just,
the Southeast Asian Community Gathering Group. I think they spell it out in their application. That's in the packet.
okay. Yeah, I didn't see it there. Okay, thank you. That was it. Those were my questions.
I'll make a
I-
motion to approve the land use requests.
Yeah, so we're approving
What-
what date for poetry? We don't know.
The one that's there.
20th or 21st.
Okay.
And we can ask them to clarify that and identify a date and get
I know
back to
Tom
everyone.
from Sustainability is working in conjunction with Jenna at the library on this, so it'd be easy to get an answer.
So,
quickly.
yeah, let's get an answer and clarify that. Any other thoughts?
So are we proposing to
Hold off on that one?
approve it, or hold up on it, or approve it with a condition?
Well, how about if we approve it with contingent upon hearing the specifics in terms of the date? And we have confirmation that they've already approached the community
They
garden.
sent a similar letter.
Yeah.
They worked
Yeah.
all that out.
Okay. Will that work? Sheila?
That's my
Sure.
understanding.
Yeah, contingent on the further information?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
Friendly amendment?
That sounds friendly to me.
Is that,
yes.
was there a motion?
Sheila,
Yeah, I did a motion, and that's David's friendly amendment contingent on getting more detail
Got it.
about this poetry picnic.
So that's a second,
And I second.
contingent.
In a second.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor? Motion carries.
It's like I've done this for almost 2 years. It is 6 o'clock on the dot.
It is about 6 o'clock. That being the case, in accordance with Section 4-5B1 of the Charter of the Town of Woodbridge, I now call this public hearing to order to receive comments. The legal notice was published in the New Haven Register on July 30th, 2025. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the legal notice? Second?
Dave,
All-
a second.
All in favor? Purpose of the meeting is to hear public input as relates to our plan of conservation and development. This is input that is coming to the Board of Selectmen, who will then consider that in addition to what comments and actions we feel are necessary in regard to the draft of the plan of conservation and development. So, are there any comments from the public present?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Morella from 184 Rimmon Road. Let me start by stating that mid-August is a poor time of year in which to schedule a public hearing. Many residents are out of town or focused on family, so your scheduling is lousy. But having chosen this time, it's the first selectman's responsibility to inform residents that a public hearing has been scheduled. I understand you published something in the New Haven Register. I'm here tonight to condemn the wholly inadequate notice of tonight's public hearing. Mika, you paid lip service in your most recent July e-newsletter to residents about the importance of public input. And in response to the poor notice, i.e. notice in the public register, of the TPC's December 2nd, 2024 public hearing regarding potential zoning changes, you vowed to do a better job publicizing public hearings. Yet you failed to even mention tonight's public hearing in that very same July e-newsletter, which came at the end of the month, or in any subsequent email to residents. So what notice was provided electronically? Like many people in town, I have subscribed to receive email notices from Town Hall. On July 28th, I received an email from Town Board and Commission Meeting Calendar with the subject, New Event, Board of Selectmen Notice of Public Hearing for Woodbridge, Connecticut. There is no mention of the POCD in the body of the email, just a notice of a public hearing at 6 p.m. August 13th, and a link titled Read On. When I clicked the link, it sent me to a page requiring me to, quote, sign in for CT-Woodbridge, end quote. I got a little frustrated at that point. I printed both of these for your inclusion. Here's the page of the link. So frustrated by the obvious inadequacy of this electronic notice and suspecting that the public hearing concerned the draft POCD, I went to the town's website and I looked around for a link to the draft document. I found nothing. No link on the front page of the website, no link under Board of Selectmen, no link under the Town Plan and Zoning Commission. I went to Town Hall and I asked Chris Sullivan for a copy. She explained that the TPZ is not distributing a draft to anyone yet, except to the Board of Selectmen. It is up to the First Selectman's office to share the draft as the First Selectman's office deems appropriate. So here I am. I did obtain a link to the POCD just yesterday through the efforts of fellow resident Muffy German. I had no time in 24 hours to read this document, and therefore I have no comments, except to say that the notice was miserable. In fact, the notice, I think, is a sham. This whole process is a sham. You can't claim that you care about public input and then fail this miserably to give residents a meaningful opportunity to review and comment on the draft POCD. So please don't claim this hearing was a success because it was a failure. And I have copies for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? Please.
My name is Joyce Simpson, 5 Oak Hill Lane. I just want to reiterate, I had the same problem. I didn't know about the meeting. I called Tony about 45 minutes ago to see if there'd be a hard copy here so I could quickly read it, and that's not available. And she said it's online underneath the vegetables. So I didn't have time to go look for the vegetables and download it at home because I had something else I had to do. So again, I just think it's a bit shabby that we don't have time to read it and make careful comments instead of reactionary comments about something so important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. To be clear, TPZ will put it out within 30 days of time that they need to consider it specifically for public comment, but I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you.
Kathy Wick, 181 Rimmon Road. I'm here to also comment on some problems I see in the process by which the POC draft was created. I also have not had time to read the 118-page document carefully because it was not available in time. I agree with the others who've spoken about the inadequate notice and the inconvenient scheduling. Could you have chosen a time when fewer people were likely to attend? I doubt it. Could you have done a worse job notifying the public about this meeting? I don't see how you could. But in addition to the inconvenient scheduling and the inadequate notice, there are other problems with the POCD process. By state statute, zoning boards are governed by state law, not by town ordinance. This is very deliberate because zoning boards are designed to be independent agencies acting separately from a municipality's executive and legislative board. In most towns, but not in Woodbridge, zoning commissioners are elected, not appointed. so they are directly accountable to the voters and thus more likely to listen to public input. Also by state statute, plans of conservation and development are to be created by the TPZ and not by the First Selectman or Board of Selectmen. This is for the express purpose of maintaining a check on the chief executive. We are all seeing every day what happens when our democratic system of checks and balances is interfered with. Unfortunately, this is not only happening in Washington, D.C., it is happening here in Woodbridge. As I watched the TPZ meetings where the board members met with the consultant, imagine my horror when I heard the consultant say over and over and over again, Mika wants this, or Mika wants that. Mika, this is not supposed to be your plan of conservation and development. It is supposed to be ours, of, by, and for the people of the town. It seems to me you've been improperly steering the process from behind the scenes. I've attended all of the public workshops, filled out all of the surveys, and studied the survey results. What I see in my brief look at the draft is that public input has not been properly represented in the outcome. You're taking the C out of the POCD, and that is not what the people of the town desire or deserve.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at the public hearing?
Are we signing in?
No, because I'm keeping track of
All
the
right,
video.
you're on top
But
of
yeah,
it.
for public comment, I'll have them sign in for the public hearing for the, I'm doing those separate, so
Okay.
thank you for asking.
Okay, so my name is Ben Carlson, 89 Central Road. I have a Master's of Environmental Management from Duke University and a PhD in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology from Yale. I'm also a member of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission. And I want to apologize ahead of time. I tried to get this to 3 minutes and it takes 4, so I hopefully you guys will indulge me a little bit. So I'd like to start by thanking the Board of Selectmen for your tireless work for the town. I'd also like to thank the members of TPZ for all of their efforts in developing the POCD. In this statement, I will highlight the problems I see with this document and the processes used to assemble it. I intend this only as constructive criticism and hope that no one takes it personally. So I'd like to start with a number, a startling number. North American bird populations have plummeted by over 3 billion individuals over the past 50 years. The reason for this decline? We're making poor decisions regarding where to develop and where to conserve. Decisions that fall directly within the purview of local boards such as the TPZ. You might imagine that it is vitally important that the best environmental thinking informs any decisions made by these boards. Unfortunately in Woodbridge, this is not what is happening. This flawed POCD is a symptom of this critical oversight. If any of you experience whiplash when turning the page from the pro-development to the conservation sections of the POCD, you are not alone. It is painfully evident that the sections are not integrated. The ideas work at cross purposes. The goals are contradictory. Development and conservation are profoundly interlinked. They can't be treated as separate issues. Integrating them requires careful, nuanced thought. How can we achieve high-density housing, expand water and sewer services, while at the same time protecting the environment and maintaining a small-town feel? On the questions that matter most, this plan is silent. So how could a group of intelligent, thoughtful individuals in the TPZ produce such an unworkable and short-sighted plan? I suggest 2 overarching reasons. First, the TPZ did not collaborate with any environmental groups. This restricted the flow and interplay of critical ideas and information. The Conservation Commission had no meaningful role in developing the plan of conservation and development. We were relegated to a single meeting with the consultants without any members of TPZ present and the opportunity to provide written feedback. Many of our ideas have been included, but they have not been integrated with the development plan in any meaningful fashion. This is a significant missed opportunity for the town to be thoughtful in how it develops while still addressing open space needs, environmental justice, and the biodiversity and climate crises. We can do this, but we need to work together. Second, the board lacks the necessary expertise to provide its own environmental knowledge. I have listened to many TPZ hearings and know the board is capable of thoughtful, careful discussion. A recent example is the Luciani Street hearing. I've never heard any such discussion regarding environmental topics. This makes sense. The members of the board are not environmental experts. In fact, TPZ is biased towards housing. For example, a vocal member of TPZ is also the head of the Housing Committee, and this member supplied significant input to the POCD. Now, there is nothing inherently wrong with having a housing advocate on the board, but these voices need to be balanced by those from conservation. These root issues have damaged not only the POCD, but have also led to many suboptimal decisions for the town and the environment. The recent rezoning and the not yet approved Fountain Street development are prime examples. I hope we learn from our mistakes. In the future, the POCD should not be owned by a single entity that is focused on housing and development. It should be produced by a joint committee from TPZ and conservation at a minimum. Other towns do this, and we should too. To wrap up, I'd like to say again that I'm in no way criticizing the members of TPZ. I'm criticizing the process. If we want to make the best decisions for Woodbridge and do our part to halt global environmental crises, we urgently need to review and improve the processes that created this unfortunate document. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon DeCott, 94 Center Road. Good evening, Board of Selectmen. I speak tonight as co-chair of the Conservation Commission as someone who cares deeply about the integrity, health, and beauty of our town. The draft plan of the Plan of Conservation Development will shape our community for the next decade, and yet, in its current form, it leans heavily towards housing growth while underrepresenting conservation. Developers have many voices: realtors, builders, housing advocates, and committees. The land has no voice. It depends on us, on our boards, our commissions, and our community to speak for its preservation. The Conservation Commission was created for this very purpose. But in the POCD process, our expertise was at least underrepresented, if not represented, no representation at all. And the conservation has not been given an equal weight, or even a proportionately equal weight. Once the land is developed, it's nearly impossible to restore it to its healthy natural state. Over the past decade, Connecticut has lost thousands of acres to urban and suburban development. That has led, as we know, to impervious surfaces that increases our flooding risk and water storm runoff, has degraded water quality, more pollution in our rivers, lakes, and aquifers, habitat loss, fragmentation, ecosystems, reduced biodiversity, and loss of the rural character of our town. These changes are not reversible at any reasonable cost. Overdevelopment is just not a local concern. It's part of a larger pattern. It accelerates climate change, it increases the risk of drought and heat islands, reduces biodiversity and resilience, and adds to pollution that threatens our wildlife and our humans. These are not distant threats. They're threats that are occurring within the next decade. And as we all know, the idea is think globally and act locally. And that's what I'd like us to be doing, and I feel there's a lack of that in our town. The draft POCD focused particularly on when it talks about habitat, it talks about valuable habitat, and I think that's a significant flaw because it's an oversight, because all habitat has its value. And to meet the bar of protection that the POCD is rendering, we have to have a rare species or an unusual outcropping or something, and just loss of biodiversity, green space, is a loss that can't be replicated easily. And so I think that's a unnecessary bar that has been repeatedly set in the POCD. And specifically, a highlighted concern, and there could be many specifics, but on page 98, in the portion that says low-density housing, and it talks about low-density housing, and then it goes on to say that, you know, if there's an unusual ecosystem, that maybe it could be preserved, but it needs to weigh economic issues, social issues that should balance environmental issues. And that is exactly wrong. Because the environment, as I said, doesn't have realtors. You can always create a social or economic interest in a piece of land. And to have us have to rise to the level of expecting it fighting for it every time is unreasonable, and it sets up a precedent that if we can't have a heroic effort that says, oh, this is a very, very valuable piece, any developer can then say, you know, this doesn't meet the grade, we can develop it. And that sort of discounts and takes the teeth out of all the rest of the conservation portion of the POCD in one fell swoop. So I think there's, well, so I'll go on, but I just have a little bit more. Affordable housing goals. So there's another part that also concerns me. And that is without a clear target that becomes an open space. I mean, another concern is that POCD contains no clear numerical goals or limits for affordable housing development. Without defined targets, that becomes an open-ended mandate that could result in ongoing unchecked development pressure without the necessary safeguards for land, water, and habitat. As a responsible plan, establish clear, measurable goals for affordable housing, ensure that these goals are balanced with open space preservation and infrastructure capacity, and protect environmental areas that are being sacrificed to meet those housing demands. Without these parameters, we risk housing expansion becoming a limitless driver of land consumption, undermining the conservation principle that POCD is meant to protect. And in 2015, the POCD embraced the idea that we would protect 21% of the town, and that has, again, it's 118 pages, and I didn't look as extensively as I might, but that whole idea that there should be a limit to how much gets destroyed is gone. So that further concerns me about the advocacy for housing. And I think it's a call to action. We have a responsibility to grow a strong to responsible growth and strong conservation. Conservation is given equal footing with housing, and conservation should be given equal footing with housing. The Conservation Commission has a meaningful role in shaping land decisions. All natural resources are valued, not just select few. As a Conservation Commission, we respectfully request time to make targeted edits to the POCD so it better reflects the balance between conservation and housing. If this request is not considered, we would be very curious as to why not, given that it is the plan of conservation and development. Well, thank you for your time and all the effort you put in and your attention to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to make comments for the POCD public hearing?
Martha German, 1170 Johnson Road. My comments will be short, but not sweet. In my opinion, this document is so misguided, it should be thrown in the trash. Its focus is totally antithetical to the clearly expressed will of the majority of town residents. In survey after survey, people rated open space and land preservation above housing and recreation. Only schools ranked higher. And yet, neither open space nor land preservation is given priority in this POCD draft. Open space preservation receives only lip service and little actual protection. This bias is so obvious that I've heard your text referred to as the POD. The C, conservation, is missing because statements about open space preservation have been systematically excised. While listening to the June TPZ meeting concerning this draft, I heard the head of the Housing Committee leading the discussion, stating, quote, "If our goal is to remove regulatory barriers to development, Kathy Hunter recommended deleting many references to restrictions on land use. Why should she wield such power? She is only an alternate on TPZ, yet you is what I have in here because I thought the TPZ people were going to be here. You accept her unapologetically skewed views without objection. If you grant her preeminence as head of the Housing Committee, equal participation by the heads of the Conservation Commission should be mandatory. As it stands now, this flawed document is an embarrassment and an outrage. The draft only represents the vision being foisted on us by the first selectman and the head of the Housing Committee. You must do better. Woodbridge residents deserve a truthful representation of their vision for the next 10 years of this town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you supposed to sign in?
Not for the public hearing.
My name is Michael Broderick. Most people know me in town since I've lived here most of my life. And I have, a matter of fact, I think I've lived here and been a resident longer than everybody on this board, as well as everyone at TPZ, which I was a member of. I'm going to speak off the, just from my observations, and I'm going to start with this. I think this is, even this hearing tonight is a disgrace, because when did you have it? When everyone is away. That is just what the TPZ has been doing, and now you're doing the same things. This is not, normally we have a lot of people here to discuss this, because people in town care about our town. So even that you did this is so wrong. And you should be ashamed of yourself, because it's anti-democratic. It's not what Woodbridge should be about. That's my first comment. As a former member of Planning and Zoning, I actually wrote with 2 other people in my kitchen the plan of conservation and development after lots of public input, that hadn't been done for 30 years. Why was that document so popular compared to this piece of trash that you are presenting to the town? It's because we cared about the entire town, the character of the town, the effects of the document on the town, and you don't seem to do it. This group, going back to Skeletor, and you, and have really gaslighted this town, just like Trump gaslights our country every day. And you should be ashamed of that fact, because you don't present accurate information to the public. You distort things. I read your newsletter, Mika. It's ridiculous. And then when you start looking at this document and looking at the specifics of it, the overlay zones, no one here has, I think, discussed how that would change the character that I moved to this town for, the beautiful rural look. That allows, right now, if that stays in this document, those overlay zones allow apartment buildings of 4 stories to be built up Amity Road, up Center Road, up Beecher Road, up Ansonia Road, all over our town in residential A. Did people ask you for that? I don't think so. People are horrified. If you just look at the opposition to the one building on Fountain Street, that should tell you what people think. Can you imagine that built on the farm across from Fitzgerald? And you can also see all the problems. Is this document for the developers, or is it for the townspeople? You're supposed to be representing us. In my view, you're representing developers, not townspeople, and so is the TPZ. You've appointed a TPZ that is so misguided, as has already been stated. You have a guy that is aligned with the group suing the town, the chairman, Clee. He's aligned with the group. And his goals.
Dr. Broderick, that
is absolutely true.
We've been there, we've discussed that. That's gone through all of the gyrations. That's just not a true statement.
Well, whatever.
That's just not a true statement.
He doesn't represent. I went to multiple of the sessions, and I saw, like, for instance, where our town planner, which has now been fired, which they should have been because they were worthless, you wasted $90,000 of our tax dollars. And I mean, they gave us such wonderful information that the 96-unit apartment building would yield 4 children based on Rutgers information. I mean, absurdity. And this is what your document is going to allow all over the town. These are your people. You put them there. And The affordable housing zone, we already know, if anyone has studied, I studied, land use, urban development, you don't put all your affordable housing in one building. Our zoning commission, when they built the Toll Brothers property right next to my office, why didn't they ask the Toll Brothers to have 4 affordable units out of the 70? No one did that. And, so they think they can impose on the whole town a whole different reality that nobody wants, and you obviously don't mind it either, because you keep telling us we need to develop the Woodbridge Country Club, which will cost us much more money, because everyone also knows the simple fact that if you develop land, not only is it lost forever, as the Conservation Commission was talking about, but you also yield more services needed, even if it's a senior facility. So that's inappropriate. It doesn't generate taxes, it loses money. That is a documented fact. You can read about it.
I'd like to see your documentation on that.
I will provide it. I'd be glad to.
I appreciate it.
And the other thing is, if we have these overlay zones and apartment buildings all over our town, look at how that's going to, we're already one of the highest taxed suburban towns in Connecticut, maybe the highest taxed. And that would blow up our school system. That will have us have to build an addition to Beecher School. And when I talk to my clients, a cross-section of our town, people are astonished, and they don't like that you are misrepresenting what is going on in this town. They don't like it at all. And I tell people, I'm a liberal Democrat. I've never voted for a Republican nationally. I tell people they have to get rid of this Democratic board because they're ruining our town. Absolutely ruining it in every way. Overspending, don't understand about austerity in a small residential town, have a ridiculous zoning commission that is not representing the interest, representing just developers. This is what you have yielded. And I'm actually tired of it. Over and over and over, the town residents have to come. Instead of having you as our representatives defending our tax dollars, our beautiful town, trying to change it to something we don't want, it's just awful. And all you have to do, if you want to look at like good affordable housing programs, look at some of the other suburban towns comparable. I was reading about Guilford. Guilford is integrating, and again, they don't build like giant apartment buildings, 4-story apartment buildings in the middle of their residential zones. They integrate, and that's what we should be doing. That's the modern way of doing affordable housing. You put a few units over this storefront, etc. And you don't have massive development that's out of the character of the town. Guilford is doing a program that is conservation-minded, small, fits in. People ask me, like, why, when you built your office building across from people's homes, was it so accepted? Well, it was really easy because I actually care about the town. So when I designed my building, I made it fit into the neighborhood. There's an arts and craft bungalow across from my building. I made my building fit into that neighborhood. People think it's like a big house. And that's how we should always be approaching development in this town. These people and your developer that you hired are so inappropriate.
We didn't hire a developer.
Well, you hired the planner that represents a lot of developers. That planner was just monstrously awful.
He doesn't represent developers.
Well, they represent not the interests of people in Woodbridge, because I was at the hearing. Not one person spoke on behalf of changing to allow overlay zones and to rescind the zoning changes. Not one spoke in favor of keeping them what they had done. And yet, they still voted against that, reversing it.
I appreciate your comments, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Don't try to shut me up, Mika.
No, I'm asking you to be cognizant of the time.
I am, and my last statement is that if we're going to get sanity back in this town, we need to replace you and the rest of the Democrats that have made these horrible decisions, putting horrible people on the zoning committee.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Would anybody else like to make comments related to the POCD? Anybody else? Anyone else? I now declare this public hearing closed. Our next item on the agenda is, I'm sorry, prior to closing it, I actually would like to ask the board to consider keeping it open and giving another opportunity for people to come in, considering all the information that we've heard from the public. So just extending it, so at least to our next, we have a public hearing scheduled for next month for the Housing Commission, and I'd like to see if we can open a public hearing and extend this public hearing so as to allow that, to give some additional folks an opportunity should they not have been able to make it this time. So,
Can I make a motion to continue this public hearing?
please,
I'll make that motion.
Second.
is there any questions, comments in regard to that?
So can we also make sure that we're getting information out in advance of that to let people know both about the other public hearing? And I know there's a tab on the website now for public hearing notices. I'm not sure if the community understands, because that's a new tab, you have to sign up for that. So if you had previously signed up for all agendas to be received, you have to go back now and ask for this one as well.
Public hearing,
Newsletter, somebody explain that.
the public hearing,
It also is in
Proc-
Can we ask TP&Z members to see it too? Because it
No.
feels like we can't.
no, well, it's not that we can't, it's the Board of please understand the process, and if you'll indulge me, the process is that the TPZ owns this Plan of Conservation and Development. They submitted it to the Board of Selectmen, who have 65 days to identify any changes or to input on it to the TPZ. We decided, as part of that, we would like to have a public hearing. My understanding, it's probably the first one that anyone can remember. It's the first time we've had any public hearing at all from a Board of Selectmen standpoint. Previously, any public hearing was just held by the TPZ. So we felt, in an effort to enable our public to speak a little bit more, we would hold that. We also picked this month over next month because school starts next month, and we had quite a considerable conversation into whether we should do it in August or September. But feeling that, for one thing, we've never even done it before at all, we felt that this would at least be an opportunity for us to get some input from the public, which I appreciate the fact that you have given us. So to that end, this is the opportunity to input to the Board of Selectmen for us to then input to the TPZ and to members of TPZ in regards to what we feel needs to be considered and/or changed. So,
Just a question, it's my understanding that the Board of Selectmen can reject the draft?
it is. And TPZ can honor that, or they can go ahead with it. That's ultimately, it's their decision as to what they do with the POCD. Joyce?
What is the deadline on the final copy of this report?
September 10th, which was the reason, September 10th, which is the other reason that we also consider doing it in August, because that gives us time to consider what the public says, because we have to have it in to the TPZ for September 10th, which is the day of our meeting, by the way.
So the next TPC meeting, I believe, has been moved to the 4th of September instead of the 3rd. If we have comments for the.
We have 65 days from the time they presented it to us. They presented it to us on July 7th. We have 65 days.
We did not need to receive it when we did, though.
However,
we did.
However, Mika, if we have comments for the TPC on the 4th, is anything going to be changed for you by the 10th? You have to read it too, if they make changes. That's awfully tight.
Understood. Again, one of the reasons that we considered everything that we
So how
consider.
does continuing this hearing to the 10th affect the timeframe?
It doesn't. It doesn't. And Robert, you're here, you can chime in on this.
Yeah, would you like me to clarify?
Please.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Robert Collins, and I am a professional planner and project manager with SLR, and I've been part of the team that has been assisting the town in updating the POCD. Just to clarify the actual process, that the state statutes dictate for a POCD is that once the TPZ, which is in fact the agency that is in charge of adopting the final plan within the town, not the Board of Selectmen, and that is by state statute, as a couple of people had mentioned. Once they completed their process, and I'm going to give a quick overview, and we can certainly talk about this more later if you would like. But they found their plan to be substantially complete after a year-long process at the end of June. And they agreed to move it forward to the 65-day required review period that the state requires. That actually officially kicked off on July 7th, or a day or so right before that, when the document was formally transmitted to the Board of Selectmen for your consideration during those 65 days, and also to SCROG. They have 65 days to review it and comment to make sure that the plan is consistent with their regional plan. And then I think that's the only agencies that this plan is required to go to. So that time period will end on September 10th. During that time period, the Board of Selectmen can choose what you all want to do as far as when you receive it. You could, at a meeting, just review it amongst yourselves, make some decisions or maybe some recommendations or some comments. You can hold a public hearing if you want, which is what you choose to do, or you could choose to do nothing, because there's not a mandatory requirement that the Board of Selectmen or the Town Council, which is the situation in some towns, actually need to take a stand on it. Obviously, you have chosen to have some public comment, hear what they have to say, and then also discuss amongst yourselves about any kind of concurrence with the plan or modifications that you might suggest to TPZ. The SCROG will also be reviewing it and then sharing those comments by no later than September 10th. After that point, and also one other thing that I wanted to mention is, as was also mentioned at the beginning, the plan has to be made available to the public no less than 35 days prior to the end of that 65, or prior to the public hearing that the TPZ would have. In talking with town staff, we decided we wanted to post it as early as possible. So the plan, while many parts of it had been routinely available on the project website and at various public engagement meetings, the plan was formally posted by town staff on August 1st. I saw the link, I was able to click on it, and I know it's there. Maybe we could have some additional banners on the website that might actually point to it or something, but I know that it was formally posted because I checked it. It was posted by town staff. And that's well in advance of 35 days prior to whenever
August 1st?
August 1st.
And
I'm sorry,
today's the
did I say?
13th of August.
That's right, but it's prior to the public hearing of the TPZ, because they're the ones that have to find. Your public hearing is a courtesy public hearing, okay? Like, you do not need to have tonight's public hearing if you did not want to, but you chose to have a public hearing because you take, you take in consideration town's comments, which is a good thing. So once September 10th passes, the TPZ can then have their public hearing or their process that they would like to have. They could potentially have a meeting or a public hearing on the very next day. Right now, the schedule is for the TPZ to probably come together sometime after the 10th, review the comments that have been received by SCROG, by the Board of Selectmen, and then also from the public. On the location on the website where the current draft is posted, there's a link where the public can, supply their comments in writing and send them to the email so that those can also be gathered and put into a database so that can be shared with the TPZ as well. Some of the comments may be similar to the ones that you're collecting, et cetera. Once they review those comments, the TPZ will then decide when to hold their public hearing, which I believe right now the target is the end of September. So they will have a public hearing. They will hear, again, from public comment. The public comments received from you, from SCROG, and from the public will be presented, will be made part of the record. And then other comments can be received. And then after the closing of the public hearing at that late September date, the TPZ will decide whether they want to move forward at that meeting or sometime afterwards with adoption with potential maybe adjustments from either SCROG, from the public, or from the Board of Selectmen. If for some reason the Board of Selectmen send a not support vote, which, you know, we could hopefully could talk about well in advance so you would understand the situations. And since a lot of the document is part of the existing document is moving forward, I would imagine you would just have recommendations. But if you send a negative support to the TPZ, they can still adopt the plan with a 2/3 majority vote. If you send support but with comments, they can adopt it just with a simple majority. I think that's most of everything, but I'm happy to answer any other questions about the process.
Could you repeat the last two?
Sure, the TPZ can approve the plan with a majority, or if the Board of Selectmen have submitted a not support of the plan, the TPZ can still approve it with a 2/3 majority, which I'm not aware of that ever happening in the state of Connecticut in the last 10 or 15 years.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. First Selectman and members of the board, notwithstanding this non-legal exposition that we just had to suffer through, you don't want to leave the people at this meeting nor the people of this town with the misimpression that somehow, however many hearings you can hold to placate the mob here, that somehow you have some control over the outcome of the vote on this plan of conservation and development. Let's make it very clear that this is mainly a courtesy through the statutes, a courtesy pass through to this Board of Selectmen. And the board of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission can give you the back of their hand and vote for that plan. So
I think,
let's disabuse ourselves of the notion that somehow you folks who heretofore have been completely on board, most of you, with this cockamamie, crazy plan with these crazy consultants, that somehow your now electioneering promises are going to change your hand-selected Town Plan and Zoning Commission. So keep holding your hearings, okay?
I appreciate your comments. I understand.
And
But
delivering the future.
It's,
You've seen it.
it's consistent, I think, with what he said. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it.
I had a quick question regarding timing. So as far as I understand it, TPZ has not held any public hearing yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, they've held TPZ meetings to review various sections.
Yeah.
And then there was the other public engagement efforts, but they have not had a public hearing yet.
Right. And my memory of 10 years ago in the process, actually 11 years ago, because it started a year in advance of
Right.
the date we were trying to target, there had been several versions of the document that received a public hearing by TPZ, not the Board of Selectmen at all. But TPZ had an opportunity to have drafts out to the public and get feedback before it came to the 65-day draft to the Board of Selectmen. So, but that has not happened. There has not been a public hearing by TPZ at all, right?
I mean, no, there has not been a public hearing, but, that's a little bit of an unusual process if they did do that, because that's not required. However, the meat of the document is obviously the goals, the strategies, and the action items. In putting together the current plan, the existing plan was taken very seriously because of the fact that at the start of the process, there was many folks that talked and instructions that came to us that said that the existing plan has a lot of still very relevant goals and strategies and action items. So the TPZ, as well as the consultants, myself, and the various town staff and commissions and boards that we spoke with, in all cases, we started with those existing goals, strategies, and actions, and we went through.
So actually, let me ask you a question about that, because that, the back part of the 2015 to 2025 POCD was actually the starting point for the board's strategic plan. So the strategic plan committee had done the same thing as we created the strategic plan, and we had pulled directly out of the POCD the
Right.
items that we thought belonged there. So did you also work from our strategic plan in your process?
We did receive copies of that, and we did take a look at that, and in our conversations that we had with town staff, we did talk about those items, and we did also notice many of the similarities, and again, of the goals and strategies, so that's made it easy to move some of those things forward. And then the new plan, as you can see from, it's not included in the current draft because but it's one of the appendices that's going to be included, which is a implementation table. So that takes all of the goals and strategy, well, specifically the action steps, just like the existing plan, and it identifies the responsible entities
Right, so I think
and
the
timeframe.
implementation plan was a separate document, not our strategic plan.
Kind of getting off into what we're going to do next, which is our discussion on it after
Yeah,
that
all
public
right.
comment. But
So
we
just a
do that.
question about timing then. So since there hasn't been a TPZ hearing, we're having this hearing, we're holding it open, we're going to continue our hearing on September 10th, then that night get our final recommendations back. TPZ, my understanding, listening to, I think it was the Housing Committee the other night, they said September 25th is the TPZ hearing. I don't know if that's confirmed. That was
I
stated.
don't know if that's been confirmed, that might be the target date.
It is the same night as Living Treasures, which is difficult. So,
My understanding is that that was
I did
originally
want to
intended.
make one other comment, though, about,
but my question actually, let me just ask a quick
but
question.
I do have a comment.
So
back
after the TPZ has its hearing, let's say it's sometime in September or whatever it's going
to-
to
or
be.
early October.
Is it possible for the TPZ at that point, once they've gotten input from the selectmen, they've gotten input from the public, they could pause if they wanted to? I recognize that people here are telling us TPZ is really controlling this. If they wanted to, can they pause, redraft, and restart the process with a 65-day, send us a new document to start all over? Is it possible?
Well, you could do whatever you want. I know that.
TPZ could. I know we
the-
can't.
Right. I mean, you potentially could.
Okay.
Right now, your existing plan, I'll just make a note, your existing plan is expired. And so therefore, there is a letter with the state OPM that has indicated that you have requested an extension. And that extension letter indicated that, the plan was in process and that the intent was for it to be adopted in the late summer or early fall. So that it was on notice in case there was any grants or other funding that the town may need, that they would be able to say, okay, that's fine. If you were to delay the process further, you would have to get in touch with OPM and let them know that. And it could impact grant funding or other state funding if that was needed.
Yep, understood. Thank
Okay.
you.
The other thing I was just going to mention was that the meat of the document, as I started to say before, is obviously the goals, the strategies, and the action steps, which in many cases pull from a lot of the existing and moved it forward. So many of them are commonly already understood goals and strategies for the town. At the April 8th public hearing, the goals, strategies, and actions were shared with the public at an open house. Those comments were received. Some edits were
I'm sorry,
considered.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding you. You said April 8th. You
April
said
8th.
public hearing, but it was just a
I'm
meeting.
sorry, open house. It was an
Open
open
house.
house.
And you're saying that back section was shared at that
That's
time?
correct. The main focus
Okay.
of the April
I didn't get a
8th
copy of that.
open house was to review the vision statement, to receive comments on that, as well as the theme areas, which there's 3, and then the goals, strategies, and actions.
How many people attended that?
Several dozen.
I think they
But
attended
those
it.
documents have also been
Don't have that document.
they've all been available on the project website since that time frame.
But yeah, So we're getting into, I'm
Yeah,
ready
we
to
are
get
getting
into
in,
our discussion.
we're getting
'cause
into a
it's-
different part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Right now, it's the matter on the table
Yeah.
is whether or not we will continue the public hearing. That's the matter on the table.
So I second, a motion was
been
made,
moved
I
and seconded.
seconded.
And so this is just discussion in
Okay.
regard to that matter.
You have to set the time for that?
Not now, do we have to now?
Usually.
We
'Cause we have to
generally
do-
do. You don't,
Yeah.
what you do is you have to do it in time to make sure that the public notice that's required, you have to do it in time for the public notice. You have to do it based on what the statute dictates we have to do. So it doesn't have to be set right now. We generally do that, so we know what it is, but we don't have to do
Are
that
you
right
doing
now.
it for the September meeting though?
So that was my
So you'd
question.
have to have a special meeting between now and the September meeting.
That
to
could be an
call for a
alternative. That could be an alternative.
No, she's saying we would have to have a meeting just to
Call for it, if
pass
it's
the
the time,
call.
you can't just set
Oh,
the
no, no.
time, right?
We're not calling for a meeting. We're extending the public hearing.
Yeah.
We're continuing the public hearing. So we're not, there is no additional public hearing.
No, I'm right, but I would assume a continuance requires legal notice.
We would
Where's our
notify,
attorney?
we would make sure we notified
not here?
we would follow statute in terms of whatever we have to do to notify the public.
Need that-
Correct.
We need that attorney now.
Okay.
Right now, the suggestion was we do it at the 10th, understanding that as of that evening, we have to submit information to the,
Yeah. So could we say in our motion now, could we say 6 PM? And then we do the other one
No,
around
because
that?
your housing ordinance commission is at 6 PM already.
Is it 6? All right.
So,
So 7? Going once.
Again, my sense is, I don't see the logic in holding a 7 o'clock public hearing on the 10th on a document we have to submit to TPZ by the 10th.
So you
I
want
can't
to do
see
it at a
how
different
reasonable
meeting.
revisions
Okay.
would be made based
Correct.
on feedback
I don't see
in
that
that
as being
time
feasible.
frame
Right.
to have it at that meeting.
So-
But I do know this gets back to part of the conversation that we had in July when we were talking about this hearing and the timing of it and all of the very important discussions that are coming up in time and trying to stagger those very important discussions to allow for.
Yeah. So I certainly want to
Communication.
so the motion right now is to keep it open. I think we need a date. I don't think we can just say we're keeping it open. So we need to pick a date, and Mika, if you're saying the 10th is perhaps too far in the process, how about Wednesday the 3rd?
Asking the group?
I am asking,
We
yes.
did this at the last meeting.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this again.
We did do
We
this at the
went
last
through
meeting.
every date for weeks.
So it's just a public hearing. We just need a quorum.
Our comments will have
We could
already
discuss on the
been-
10th. So if you're going to be here on the 10th, the public hearing could happen. We're running out of days. So I'm
Right.
going to put in the motion Wednesday the 3rd at 6 PM, unless someone stops me.
And that does not compete with TPZ's September meeting?
Right now, they had the 25th, I think.
No,
No, they
there's
have-
a hearing.
No.
Their continuation hearing
I believe it's,
on the 2nd, on Tuesday. So
Okay, yeah, no.
notice, it's under, if you go to the legal agenda,
Yeah.
it's legal
It's on the
notices.
It's on the second.
the first
Okay.
is a holiday. It would be the first, but the first is a holiday.
All right,
Yeah,
yeah. So it does not interfere.
correct.
I'm putting it on my calendar, folks.
So can we?
That's the
how do we
motion.
feel?
That's the motion.
So is there a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second.
I just need one, yeah, for discussion, okay.
For discussion purposes, who can make it, who can't?
I can make it.
David? The third?
Can you make the 3rd at 6 PM?
Yeah.
So can I make one comment? So I think.
And,
that-
no, actually, go on.
I apologize.
Go on, no, that's your right, go ahead.
So I think that if you choose to reject this plan, which I think you've heard enough, I don't think you need another public hearing because you're just going to hear more of the same. You know, I think
What I heard was that this was inadequately noticed and that there are people who would otherwise be here, who aren't here, who might like to say something. That's what I heard, loud and clear. So that's the reason we're looking to continue it.
Yeah. And we're not going to vote
So-
tonight to reject
And
it.
and we're not going to vote on the 3rd either. The 3rd is, again, just to get input in preparation for our final, what we do finally. And that would be on the 10th. So, in the answer to your question. Maria?
I can't be here, I'm working that night, but I can certainly listen in and I will be here on the 10th. That's not a reason not to have it.
Andrea?
I'm available.
Steve?
So we need 4. Right now we have 3. Mika, can you attend?
I can attend. And again, this is for the public hearing to listen to what the public, anybody from the public might have to say at that time. So Allison, we will continue this to September 3rd at 6 o'clock.
So that's the motion we have to vote.
That's the plan right now. That's the motion that's on the table.
Does that need another legal notice, Nick?
Well, either way, it should be well noticed.
Yeah,
Well, legal notice
Is
is
different.
noticed.
It's different.
It's noticed. We do legal notices consistently, as does TPZ. They follow a process that's dictated that they follow. That's what they follow.
Yeah, continuation.
There are
I
other,
understand, but for the purpose
Triggers
of actually getting the word out to people, New Haven Register, I didn't see that notice,
There-
and we heard a lot of people didn't see that.
understood,
Like,
understood.
that's just a reality, unfortunately.
And again, you can sign up for notifications. In addition to it being you can sign up for notifications so that you're emailed that there is a notice. We need to look at why the information wasn't complete, and we'll look into that and identify and correct that. But that's the process. It's,
So is the motion for the September 3rd at
Yes.
6 PM to continue? For the public hearing?
it is.
So
Any other,
I think, let's vote.
are there any comments? Any other, David?
Can we amend that just to ensure that the next communication from the town hall, the email blast that goes out?
There is not an email blast that goes out notifying people of a public hearing. There's not.
But David, we talked
It's
about this.
news. It's news. It's not a notice. You can put it in the news. You can tell the people in town that we're having a public meeting. It's not secret. We can
It's
do
not
it.
secret. No, it's not secret at all.
Could-
Could you tell us that June is dog registration month? Why can't you tell us about a public hearing?
Mika, you could
It's a
put
fair
a link
question.
in your letter to all the meetings. You could put a link.
I'll find
Anyway,
out what I can do
I would
from a
like to
legal
see it.
perspective.
That would be.
I can tell you my hesitation is only because of what I've been told in terms of what can or should or shouldn't be done. That's my only hesitation. So I
I
have
would
to
like to see
consider
it
that.
done, so I would like to see that, I would like us to do this and have it on September 3rd. But I would also like to see that it goes out in the email, that the information goes out so that people know about it.
And that's a friendly amendment.
If you would take it as a friendly amendment, I would.
I will do that. I will take that as a friendly amendment. If the person who seconded the motion
I
also
don't
wants that.
Yeah, I second.
What is the friendly amendment?
That it go out through the email news blast, whatever we call it, news from town hall.
And that's legally,
Again, I don't
we can
accept
do
that
that?
until I
MailChimp,
identify that that's
constant
something that
contact.
would be
Contingent
appropriate
upon-
Yeah.
from a
So-
town policy standpoint.
What's appropriate
David,
from a
I can
town
tell you-
policy standpoint is what this Board of Selectmen decides is appropriate.
Yeah, it's a motion.
I think that if we as a Board of Selectmen want it to go out, it should go out, period.
From the perspective of,
If-
and
And I
again,
don't think it's gonna be illegal, and if it is illegal, I still think it should go out.
Yeah,
We'll
I
look
mean,
into
there has been statements that I've made in the past hesitating or dialing back how this board interacts with other boards, namely the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. I don't think it is legal for this board or Mika through a newsletter or anyone beyond the Town Planning and Zoning Commission to call attention to their public hearings, to their
But to
notices.
our continued public
Correct.
hearing.
This,
Yes.
I'm
I'm sorry.
getting there.
Okay, sorry. I'm antsy.
This is the board holding a public hearing that legally isn't even required. So this board is doing a service to the community, inviting members of the public to come make comments so that the board can then do what the law gives it the option to do, which is then to vote on the plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission can take that however they want, but this is this board's opportunity to weigh in on the commission process. So this board is giving what the law doesn't require, quite frankly, this public hearing opportunity before it to hear the public. So from a legal perspective, I think we can call whatever attention we want to that.
Thank you. That's what I was waiting for. We'll take care of it.
I will send it out in an e-news blast.
Thank you.
All right, so now we vote on the motion?
I don't think it's necessary that we put in there that we will send it out on an email blast. I can tell you that.
So
it'll be taken care of.
that's a friendly amendment and a second. So if we're going to take out the friendly amendment, we need to vote to do that. But first, actually, we need
No,
to
we don't.
vote
We just need
on
to-
the friendly amendment. So you can vote to add that friendly amendment, that it require that it go out by email.
We
We're in
haven't called
favor?
for a vote, folks. I'll call for a vote.
Okay, let's.
Is there any other discussion? Maria?
In the interest of fairness, you could have other groups and other hearings and other opportunities for engagement where people would prefer it be specifically called out in the motion how the communication is going to go out. So I want to make sure that we're equally calling attention to all of the important matters in town. This is incredibly important, but as are other things. So if we're going to do that for this, then I also think we should do that for all the other ones as well.
We already do that. Not we, it's done at the discretion of the staff or whomever's putting it together when it goes out. So basically, that's in the hands of Mika. I'm just saying that the board would like it to be, that this one be sure to get in there, because it didn't in July. So, I was a little surprised that it didn't, but I understand some reluctance to step on the TPZ's toes. I can talk about that later when we discuss this, but that's, for the purpose of this, I don't think we have to necessarily worry about being fair to anybody, because it's already a discretionary piece of information. It's a puff piece. The last thing I saw looked more like a campaign piece. So I don't know that it's.
What are you referring to, David? Why would you say that?
I'm talking about the newsletters that come out from the town.
They're consistent with what I say,
Fine.
what I want to say.
Great. And
I
I
say
would
what-
like, I
and I
would just
have
like
always
the
done
board's input to
No,
speak. We would really like you to say this.
That's
about the-
unfair and it's not true. I do not, under any circumstances. As a matter of fact, I go out of my way to make sure that I don't mix anything to do with the campaign with my job.
I was merely expressing my viewpoint, what I thought it looked like. And
I'm
because I
expressing-
was surprised that it
Because
didn't
you
say
mentioned it,
anything.
I'm letting you know that that's not the case.
Thank you.
So.
That being an
My-
aside,
I'm along the lines of what Maria is saying. I don't know that if we do it this time, do we have to do it other times when people say, oh, well, I'd like to know about this, please send this out. Oh, I'd like to know about this.
I think we're reading too
I'm
much into
already
this.
indicating that we will send out a notice. We will send out a notice. Why does it have to be part of the motion? And what does that set us up for motions in the future in situations like this?
So I accepted it as a friendly amendment, as a gesture to the community that is concerned. I want them to be assured that an email will be going out. I have every confidence, because I've heard everyone here say that that will happen. I don't think it's a bad thing to have in the motion. It's a friendly amendment that's been accepted. We can vote to either keep that friendly amendment or strip it out and continue with the vote. I'm in favor of doing that. In the future, the Board of Selectmen can add whatever they want to their motions. You certainly have the power to do it. We always have. That's why we're doing it tonight. We're considering a friendly amendment that revolves around sending out public notice. It's not meant to be critical of anyone or anything. It's a process going forward, and we're telling the town what we're going to do. That's all. So I would like us to keep this in.
Any other comments? All in favor for the motion as,
The friendly
I'm sorry,
amendment.
please state the motion, please.
So it's just, we're voting just on the friendly amendment right now.
No, you don't, no. There's been a motion made for us. There's already been a motion made. We're not
Okay.
voting on the
So
friendly
we can
amendment.
vote on the friendly amended motion.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Which was the continuation of the public hearing on September 3rd.
With an
At
email
6
notice.
With notice.
At 6 p.m.
At 6
Email
p.m.
notice.
Correct.
Mhm.
All in favor? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, thank you, Robert. We'll get to you in a second for the next part of our meeting. The next part of,
If I may, I just want to say that 2 public comments were made virtually, submitted electronically.
Yeah, yes, we didn't ask if there was, I didn't even do public hearing November route, but you guys did receive.
Yeah, we received them. I just want, I don't need
Yes.
to, I'm not asking that they be read, I'm just saying.
And I'll
they're-
make sure that in the hearing minutes that they're included.
Thank you.
in the future, yeah, just always in the future, mention that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for mentioning it.
Yeah.
All right, next item on the agenda is public comment for our Board of Selectmen meeting. Is there anyone here that would like to make public comment?
It was posted. Yes,
Is there anyone here that would like to make public comment?
posted on July 28th.
Is there anyone here that would like to make public comment?
Do you want to comment? In the folder. No, this has been since the 28th. This has always been there. You open the legal notice folder.
Seeing no one,
Just like any
we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is our discussion on the POCD.
I have to take a rest.
Link in the email notification.
Why don't we take, yeah, that break is a good idea.
I was going to ask the same. We're going to have another hour of
Can't make that not true.
Our meeting, our next item on the agenda is our POCD discussion. I'd just like to preface it that this is our opportunity to to discuss and collaborate in regards to input as to what our thoughts are on the POCD. I obviously would like this to be a productive discussion. So offer those things that you would like to. We're going to try to control repetition, and if we come to some conclusions or we identify that we're not going to agree on some things, we'll move on. But let's begin the discussion. So if you would, I don't know if there's anybody who would like to open up. It's now an open discussion with regards to your thoughts on the draft POCD that we were provided. We have Robert Collins with us here from SLR. And Robert, actually, I think if we could start off by you gave us already an overview on the process. If you can tell us a little bit about how we arrived at this document, what's gone into arriving at this document, that would be appreciated and may help us in terms of our discussions.
Okay, great, thank you. For the record, again, Robert Collins, Principal Planner and Project Manager with SLR Consulting. And we have been the consulting team, and I've been leading them that have been assisting the town with updating the POCD. Yeah, I did kind of prepare a brief little statement, but I know we touched on some of it, so I'll kind of just cruise through it kind of quickly. But I just wanted to indicate that, what's in front of you tonight is the draft of the updated Plan of Conservation and Development. And it is a culmination of a year-long process that we have been undertaking that has been a collaborative effort between the TPZ, obviously, since they're going to be their document, town staff, and I wanted to give a special shout out to Chris Sullivan, who has been instrumental in helping us make sure that we were coordinating with various town staff and boards, and as well as with the TPZ and sharing information. We did meet with other town staff throughout the process, and also other town boards, commissions, and committees. And their input was taken very seriously, and I feel like in most cases our engagement with them was very robust. Also, obviously, the Woodbridge residents, because the engagement that we had, which included initially and running throughout the entire process, and it started on May of last year. We've had a project website, which is linked through the TPZ's page on the town's website, that has been up again since May of last year and has continued to be updated with announcements, various documents, and then also results of some of the TPZ meetings where there was presentations or some of the public engagement activities. That was followed by a community-wide survey that was conducted last June. Many of you might have participated in that. We did get a 7% response rate from town residents with a volunteer survey. That's actually pretty good. 2% for a volunteer survey is usually the target, and we exceeded that by more than double. Of course, bigger turnout for the survey would have been wonderful, but that usually would have required mailing the survey out or something like that, which would have been an expense to the town. However, the survey, while we did gain a lot of information from those initial feedback, it was a starting point and for some of our secondary conversations that we had with the community. A full report of the survey was presented at open house, as well as available on the project website. There were 2 community open houses and the open houses format was both an information sharing as well as an opportunity for members of the community, and I believe some of you attended, to learn not only about the process, but also to actually engage actively on some activities to kind of further clarification on some issues maybe that were mixed opinions in the survey or things that we knew we wanted to talk about with the community in a little bit more detail. A second open house was then held in April, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, and that was also to touch base with the community again, but also share with them the vision statement as well as the goals and strategies that had been initially developed following the detailed conversations with town staff, with the TPZ, and with the other boards and commissions. comments were received, and copies were available for folks to take of those actual goals statements. And we did allow people to send comments if they chose to Chris for approximately 2 weeks after that meeting, in case they wanted to digest the goals, strategies, and action steps in more detail. And I don't know if anybody did submit anything following that meeting to Chris. Maybe a few, but we did, all the comments that we received at that open house were cataloged and were available through a simple table that's shared with the TPZ, but also posted on the project website. We also had numerous TPZ meetings throughout the process to kind of touch base with them at each step, from kickoff to talking about the survey, to talking about the open houses, to debating the vision statement, which went back and forth and fine-tuned, as well as the specific themes, and then ultimately the going through in great detail the goals, strategies, and action steps that they carefully reviewed. And we ended up having at least 2 or 3 extra meetings with them to kind of review all those goals, strategies, and actions. And then finally, it's where we are today, and we're in the 65-day review period, which I explained a little bit already, so you're aware. We're requesting specific feedback on this draft plan from you all, as well as from SCROG and the public as a whole. And the current draft plan has been posted as of the beginning of this month, so that the public can review the entire document if they choose to. They can download it, and they can submit questions through the email link that's been supplied on that page. Following the completion of that 65-day review period, which is September 10th, the TPZ will then consider all the comments that they receive from those entities that I just mentioned, and then they will hold their own public hearing and then have an adoption process to conclude the POCD update process. The existing plan that's in front of you does include a detailed community profile and existing conditions report, and that's summarized in Chapter 2. That kind of sets the stage for then the purposes and the reasons for the goals and the strategies. That was part of the initial process to create that community profile and existing conditions report, and that also was made available to the public at the first public information session, as well as on the project website. The vision statement that was crafted based on the conversations with the community as well as with the TPZ resulted in 3 theme areas for the POCD. The first one is pursuing responsible growth and housing diversity. The second one is embracing sustainability and resilience. And the third one is promoting a welcoming community. These seem to fit well with our understanding of the existing plan and some of the goals, but trying to make the plan a little bit more simplified than the existing plan, which kind of has more chapters and more specific subjects. We tried to condense it down into the theme areas. Each theme area then has various goals, strategies, and actions that will be pursued over the next 10 years, because that's the life cycle of the POCD, and that is to achieve that community vision and the plan's goals. Again, those goals, strategies, and action items were initially started from taking the various strategies and action steps from the existing plan. They were in action plans, I think is what they're called in the existing plan, and we took each one and we reworked them as to where they needed to go in the theme process. And at the same time, we had to make sure we were touching base with all the subjects that the state statutes require us to consider for a POCD. And then those were updated and fine-tuned based on our conversations with town staff. We had roundtable meetings where we met with staff of each of the departments that kind of would tie into the POCD. We talked with the finance director, we talked with Parks recreation, we talked with DPW, we talked with the Human Services Department, we talked with library, and we also talked with the schools, as well as the First Selectman's office. I may have missed a department or two, but we did talk with committees as well. The Conservation Commission, we actually had 2 meetings with them, as well as they had active attendance at the various open houses. In sharing the existing plan with the Conservation Commission, we did ask them to mark it up, and we did incorporate everything that they gave back to us. That was appropriate because they also have the open space plan, which we didn't want to supersede or over connect with, similar to the affordable housing. We did meet with the Housing Committee as well. The affordable housing plan is the existing plan for that subject in the town, and we didn't want to supersede it. We wanted to make sure there was linkages and setting the stage for the next affordable housing plan.
Robert, I'm sorry, just to make sure I understood, because I know Conservation was represented here, and they were very specific in indicating that they didn't feel they had adequate input. So from what I just heard, you gave them a draft for them to mark up in terms of the section that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a similar process that we gave to all the boards
Okay.
and the commissions, which there was notification from town administration that went out last fall to all boards and commissions and committees with the town, asking them to start thinking about what their goals and strategies might be and how it might relate to the POCD. And then they were asked to submit initially their ideas. Almost in all cases, they started with like things that were connected to them that were within the POCD, the existing one. And then I think there was another notice about that, and then in early January, there was a final notice, and we received feedback from most of those boards and commissions. And then that was followed up by actual in-person meetings where we then, we set up half-an-hour time slots with each town staff as well as various boards. They sent representatives, and we sat down with them. There was only 2 boards that we ended up meeting with twice because they asked us to. One was the Conservation Commission because we needed to clarify a little bit about some of what they were submitting to us. And once they kind of understood, they submitted a second round of information to us that we incorporated into the plan. And then also the Economic Development Commission. We did end up meeting with them twice. Again, there was knowing that economic development in the business district area was very important. We wanted to make sure that we got all of their edits and linkages to the economic development related goals and strategies that was, sound with them. And then I know that at the open house in both the fall and the spring, there was a significant number of the members of the Conservation Commission that attended and commented at those meetings. And then lastly,
You mentioned the housing, and I'm sorry to interrupt you again. They have come out with a new revision that will be distributed to the boards of selectmen in regard to the
Revision to what?
new revision of the housing plan.
Oh,
So that's something that we will probably, we'll see about next meeting, but it'll probably be October, just
Okay.
because of time involved, but it is something that obviously we want you to be aware of. This just came out, I think it was this week, Allison, or was it the end of last week? It was while I was away.
Yeah, I think it was almost the end of the workday yesterday, to which I said, this looks great, let's talk about it for another meeting.
okay.
And I haven't gone back to it,
So
I'll let you all
I'm
know.
glad you shared that information.
They
It's
haven't
good to
even-
know. I did notice, it was one of my comments that we have been talking about the need for revision. That wasn't reflected in the POCD, so.
It literally came out
Yeah.
just very recently. Well, I thought it was while I was away, but could have been
No,
just even.
it was, because I
Okay.
remember, no, it was yesterday. It
Okay.
happened yesterday.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well.
Yeah, and I think, it's really important, we take it very seriously, and the POCD should, is that there's a lot of competing issues, obviously. But in the POCD, while it is a TPZ document, it is a guiding document. The state requires two growth management documents of all communities. One is the POCD, which is supposed to be the guiding principles that kind of lay out the groundwork or the blueprint for the next 10 years. In many cases, in many towns, it's like staying the course or, focusing just in this area or something like that. The zoning regulations are the other document, and that is the regulating part, okay? And I know that some of the comments that were received tonight were also kind of talking more about the regulating part, which we all know is somewhat separate, and the POCD is supposed to set some of that guidance. But again, the POCD should not necessarily be very descriptive on something because it's guiding and things may change. And you want to make sure there's that linkage to those other plans that the other groups have. One being Economic Development Commission, which they have their economic development plans. Some of them are very specific, and so the POCD is linking them to them, not overwriting what the Economic Development Commission may be wanting to pursue in the next 10 years. The Conservation Commission, they obviously have their open space plan. It is a different type of plan and holds a little bit different prominence, but it is their plan of their opportunity to voice like what their main goals and objectives are going to be. We tried to make a linkage to that, and there's actually a full goal in the plan that you will see as you've reviewed it that pretty much summarizes. I think it's goal 3.2 that goes into pretty detailed and has several strategies as well as probably 24 action steps that we received from this Conservation Commission, and we tried to make that linkage. Same thing with housing. There's a goal about housing. Housing Committee has some very specific goals, and we tried to highlight them but not be as specific, knowing that their plan was going to be evolving. The Affordable Housing Plan has to be updated every 5 years. The POCD has a 10-year life, and so therefore we didn't want to put something too specific about housing in the POCD that might be contrary to a future affordable housing plan or amendment that they may be doing. But we tried to lay the groundwork so that that equal balance between all the competing issues could be there. Sustainability Committee also had a big voice related to climate resilience and sustainability, which is a big issue for many communities in the state. And we did receive a lot of their specific things as well as the sustainable CT desires and goals. The Committee on QPOP, I think it's called. I always get the name wrong. Talking about town property and making a linkage for that at various appropriate levels. And some of the plans that they are also working on, we mention them in the POCD and have action steps that they would continue to monitor that and share information with you. But we didn't have a specific goal that was overstating what they had told us.
So I just have a question about, thank you, by the way, for your work on this.
Sure.
And for your understanding of the town of Woodbridge as a consultant coming in and dealing with all the various groups. I guess from my point of view on the Board of Selectmen, since most of those committees and commissions that you listed, aside from TPZ, are advisory to the Board of Selectmen, we tried with our strategic plan to have a sense of what the Board of Selectmen at a high level would know about the various committees and what they were pursuing. But it sounds like there might be some information that was shared in this process that hasn't been shared with the Board of Selectmen. I guess that housing plan revision is an example. We haven't seen it.
It hasn't been shared with anybody as yet.
Right, but if it's going to get into, and I see Robert's point is, this POCD needs to be reflective but not lock in any of those things, right? So we sort of need to, I feel as though as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I'll just speak for myself, I would like to be better informed about what the various committees and commissions have been putting through this process so that I understand where they are. If they haven't necessarily come through the Board of Selectmen, but they're going to TPZ, does the Board of Selectmen have its own opinion of those things? And that's probably what we should share with TPZ in our comments back, to say, these are all terrific. I'm sure they're all terrific goals. The aspirations of our various volunteer groups are going to be phenomenal. Can we do it all, though? And that balancing act, that's sort of what I've always thought of as the Board of Selectmen's role. I understand that TPZ is trying to put out a plan that's not going to tell the Board of Selectmen what to do, but just in trying to get that sense of it. So I think it might be helpful to have some of this information, if that's possible to receive.
That information has been incorporated into the plan. That's what the plan
Yeah, I
reflects.
would say that all that information that we received is incorporated in the plan now.
Right.
So those action steps are reflective of those items that we carried forward from the existing plan, as well as the conversations that we had with town staff, town departments, and then those various boards and commissions.
But
And then
I
they
guess
were-
my question is, if the boards and commissions sent something to be included in the POCD, and it's included in the POCD, is that as though the Board of Selectmen has also accepted it, even though we haven't?
Well, I mean, I think
Seen
that's
that?
what your review should focus on. I mean, my hope is, because we did talk, to the first selectman's office, we did talk with the finance director, to make sure that we were congruent with like ideas or needs for grants and other funding mechanisms. The conversations, for instance, that are just popping into my head, like that we had with the Human Services Director. My understanding was that those comments that we received were in line with, the desires of the Board of Selectmen, or knowledge at least. If not, if there's something in there that you have concern with, that would be really what your focus
What we
could
should
be.
focus, yep.
But I'm hopeful that most of those things that you might find, as far as like CIP projects and things like that, I would think that most of them you would probably be somewhat aware of already. And in cases where there might not have been like clear understanding, you might see that the action step is more vague. Like it might say consider, like consider this adjustment with the Recreation and Human Services Department.
And
or
if we
something
want
like
to,
that.
we can request that TPZ sharpen up instead of consider, make it
Right, like you, that's
prioritize
exactly
or
right.
act.
You could say, we
Yeah.
just found out about a grant that we need for this, and it was, we didn't catch it back in the spring when we were doing that, and you could have a comment that says, please add this.
Right.
We're not sure that is in fact a priority because of funding, so maybe we need to back off on that. So hopefully you'll
Yeah,
you'll
I'm hoping
find that.
we can have,
Yeah.
can we
Please.
discuss? Because respectfully, Robert, I appreciate all this information you're sharing, but the purpose, I want to hear from the board members and share my thoughts, and it's really nice having you here so we can ask questions to get some clarity throughout the discussion. So bringing it to the board. I'll just kick us off. I feel like there's and kind of piggybacking off of some of the public comments, the comments made during public hearing. I do feel, I read every page, that housing is treated with more quantitative data, site specificity, and actionable language, while the conservation component remains more conceptual in nature, maybe more policy oriented, but there's very little, if any, numerical or and site level specificity. After hearing what you just said, Robert, I'm confused now if that's a result of what was provided from boards and commissions, or if that's a result of the attention to that was paid by the writers of this document. I'm not sure that I think it does matter, but for the purpose of providing input for the plan, I do think a ton of attention needs to be allocated towards the conservation piece to make it more cohesive and align better and more proportionate in terms of level of specificity as the development piece. I'm not saying anything negative about the level of specificity with the development piece, but it's not equal. I've also noticed a ton of inconsistencies in the reference to open space. There is a section that defines open space compared to open land, adding that layer of protection. There's a map that depicts the protected open space, but throughout the document, the terms are used interchanged. I'm not walking away from reading that with any clear understanding of the breakdown of our open space. It seems that act like recreation, working lands like agriculture, protected open space, and general green space are all lumped together. I think it's pretty relevant to a POCD to have that stuff very clearly broken down by percent of land use. I have a lot to say, but I want to pause there because I think that's a pretty broad statement, just getting to what I view as inconsistencies between the conservation and the housing, or development rather. So I'm curious to hear from you all, and if you notice the same discrepancies or disparities or not.
So I would say with regard to housing and also Country Club of Woodbridge, and I think we recognized this when Christine was here, there are separate plans that, they don't have to exactly be replicated in here, but they have to be, somehow we have to square it. We have several planning processes moving at the same time. So I think I do agree that especially the housing piece and the use of the country club property, where we're trying to balance that, environmental concern in the housing piece, that's where I think the Board of Selectmen really does need to dig in a little bit more, and I would hope that our comments back are timely enough that they can be really incorporated. I think I've heard about the process enough to know that that's possible, but not guaranteed. Is that right?
Well, we can certainly, obviously, share with the TPZ. Obviously, they'll make the final determination, but you could do that. And I know regarding the country club property, because that's been an ongoing process, we've made it very clear at most of our meetings that, we're kind of treading water on that subject until we get feedback from you all, since that's your process. And we have 2 or 3, I'll call them like parking spaces. There's 3 action items that are similar, that are sprinkled through in 3 different locations that talk about, balancing the situation on the country club site. And the hope is that with a September adoption, that maybe your process with the country club site might have a final plan, and then we could be more specific about that. But right now, it just indicates to continue to support the town in its efforts on studying that process.
Yeah. So I would say the other piece that I think is becoming a little clearer is there are some competing capital projects, very large dollar amount capital projects. So I think you had something about the center building, but that building process, potentially a separate police department, which the Board of Selectmen hasn't really discussed yet, but will be, and a project at Beecher Road School as well. Because this is the TPZ's document, and the TPZ will have requests coming in front of them related to these things, right? I'm hoping to see a little bit more of that, and I think that's probably on us, the Board of Selectmen, to get that to you, to be incorporated?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and just remember, we're talking about in your comments that you would put together, that you would give to the TPZ.
Yeah.
Yeah, a document by the 10th of September, is that right?
Right, with
Okay.
your suggested recommendations or modifications.
Yeah.
So I wanted to add something to piggyback off of Andrea's comments related to the goals of embracing sustainability and resiliency, and also promoting a welcoming community. When my family and I go away, we look for trails, places to hike, places to walk, and we've recently been in Massachusetts, and the trustees of reservations in Massachusetts stewards over 47,000 acres of land around Massachusetts and northern Connecticut. They protect over 2,000 acres of agricultural soil. They're also the largest private holder of conservation restrictions in the state of Massachusetts. And with all of this protection of these lands, there are still hiking trails, open trails, cross-country skiing trails in the wintertime. And you can do all this around conservation efforts to restore dunes and to restore the waterways in Massachusetts. It's habitat restoration. We were hiking by osprey habitat restoration that was occurring, in this natural park. And I think within the action items of embracing sustainability and in promoting a welcoming community, I think we're missing an opportunity to partner with some of the conservation organizations in Connecticut, like the Connecticut Land Conservation Council, that has some resources to not only be able to steward this land appropriately, and I know that there's lots of discussion about keeping the water and the air clean, and that's wonderful as well, but some opportunities to not only steward the land, but to increase the quality of life by providing some places for the people of Woodbridge to hike, to enjoy nature, while also maintaining that land and bringing some of those habitats back. On page 29, there's a little bubble that talks about in one of the surveys, the priorities for open space for walkable and hikeable paths and wildlife viewing. And I think that there's an opportunity there to combine that and promote a welcoming community and promote an increase in the quality of life for the people of Woodbridge, and still do that in partnership with not only stewarding the land, but restoring the land and restoring some habitats. So I think that there's an opportunity there to incorporate, maybe partner with other conservation groups in Connecticut and sort of have something that embraces all three of these goals together.
Yeah, I would just mention that I think if you look at goal 3.2, which is the extensive one about open space, there is some discussions about teaming with other partners, so that might be a place where you might find a location to add something more specific.
87. It starts on 87.
87, thank you.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second. I'm going to ask Allison and Karen, I know we have this recorded, so obviously you can go back to the recording, but I'd like us to keep a record of what we're talking about so we don't lose the points, so that Robert's not the only one taking notes. Okay, thank you.
I also want to know,
Perfect, thank
all
you.
of my notes are written down too.
Great, and that's what I'm hoping everyone's done. I've done the same thing.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So, but it's, but just to make sure we collect this, and we ultimately have to put together a deliverable, so we have to figure out how we want, and we have to do it in such a way as we can do that.
Yeah, so I was going to ask if we could get you're probably doing this in InDesign or something, right? So is it a PDF that we could mark up, or how literally would you want us doing that?
Oh, I
My
already
sense is,
put it all in a Word document.
and that's what I'm
I mean, the
thinking, what we're
PDF
doing is we're providing input,
Okay.
so.
Yeah. I mean, the PDF is available on the website, as we talked about.
Yeah, that's
so
what we
you
have.
could potentially link that
If you
down.
have Word documents, if you each want to send it to me separately, I can include with the points you're making
Well-
tonight. I'll put a whole final document together.
After we have our discussion, what I've, for example, what I've done might look different.
Yeah.
So let's,
Yeah, me
good
too.
idea.
That's why I
Okay,
didn't
and then
submit it.
We have
after
until the next
tonight's
meeting.
meeting,
Correct,
Yeah.
you
correct.
send me whatever. It's nice.
But we have to make sure we give ourselves enough time.
I
to
would
put it
also
together,
just
so.
mention one other thing about, I think you'll have to be more specific about your environmental, shortfalls. Because, again, some of that may fall out of the normal requirements of a POCD. It doesn't mean that you can't supply them, but again, that wasn't part of like an extensive environmental study could be a whole separate process.
Absolutely.
And maybe that could be a better action step, maybe pursue like an environmental assessment study or something like that.
Yeah, so that's actually in our strategic plan.
Yeah, because it could fall into a different document that could be compared.
Like, how do you have a whole section, how is there a whole section devoted to natural resources and forest land isn't discussed?
Well,
So-
did you read the community profile and existing conditions?
Yes, and I have a lot of
I mean, there's
comments
a
on
map, of the land cover in there.
Yeah, but
which,
what does,
but land cover includes forested land.
yeah, but it's not, okay, so you have this whole section devoted to resilience and sustainability, which I thought was written explicitly through the lens of like energy, in terms of sustainability and resilience and renewable resources. Forests also weren't included in that. Forests are a huge renewable resource and a huge solution, statewide and even, maybe not in this federal administration, but acknowledged in Connecticut as a natural solution to climate change. That is not reflected in here. In fact, there's homage paid to an affordability housing crisis. There is no mention of an environmental crisis, a climate crisis, or using our natural resources, our open spaces as a solution to that. And I think that is a flaw that cannot go unaddressed in this plan. Like to call out a housing crisis, which is true, and not the climate crisis, which is true, is to me.
We have the linkage to the hazard mitigation plan for the region, which goes into all that stuff, including in the existing conditions report. We have this discussions about the increase in temperature. We've supplied the available information. And again, it's not, remember, this isn't my plan, this is your plan.
Yeah,
so
so
you can make a comment,
good
but also the discussions were guided by the information that we received. So for instance, related to the sustainability, if you feel that it's heavy on the energy, that's because that's the information that we received from the Sustainability Committee as far as what their goals were. We didn't want, it's not, like, again, we only repeated what we heard from our discussions with various town staff, and we tried, because we were here to advise, to guide, and inform.
Okay.
And so we responded to what we heard and the information that we got. And your information that you are going to supply now will be helpful. But just remember that we tried to align it with information that included action steps that were to meet the other selectmen's comments about priorities and funding and stuff like that. So we were trying to make sure that we were staying within the means of the town, and then pass up things that were more of the means of the region. And the hazard mitigation plan and the work that SCROG is doing on climate change are really handled more at the regional level, and then complemented by what the town can do to support the region.
Woodbridge is, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I understand the correlation in terms of identifying a housing crisis and not identifying an environmental crisis. And I think a suggestion, and I think it's an appropriate suggestion to say, if you're not, it's not so much, well, if you acknowledge that, you got to acknowledge this. It's just that they both exist.
Yes.
And we will work toward doing whatever, everything you pointed out works toward addressing that, but simply not pointing it out, literally not having the term, is something that is easy to fix and kind of speaks to what the sense is in terms of what we're saying. So I understand, and and it resonates with me only in the sense of what you're actually asking is just make it, and you bring it out not because, well, if you have this, you have to have that. It's more, well, you do have this, so why not have this? If you point it out once, why not the other? So I agree.
Thank you.
From the perspective of just putting it in there, I don't think it's tough. And again,
Well,
from a
it is.
recommendation
Maybe it
standpoint.
just needs to be pointed out or shown.
Correct.
I think we call it like the changing environmental conditions and increase in frequency of storms and things like that, and utilizing existing resources to the fullest of your benefit.
Yeah, and there's times where reading it, looking at it, semantics could make a difference.
It matters. Words matter.
Yeah.
And this town pays very close attention, as you heard.
Yeah. So to that, I mean, I share a lot of the sentiments that have been expressed, particularly on sustainability and climate crisis issues. We have the three themes there, and they're not necessarily meant to be in order. Maybe they were, but I would I would change this word embracing sustainability and resiliency to prioritizing sustainability
thank you.
and resiliency. And I would put that actually as the number one theme if I were ranking them. Maybe they weren't meant to be ranked. It's such that pursuing responsible growth and housing diversity kind of answers to prioritizing sustainability and resiliency. My concern with some of the housing, not only is that it's not in balance with conservation, is that it doesn't necessarily specify that any development that we do, including in housing, is a sustainable housing that is going to be resilient to the climate crisis. So we've identified, and this specifically identified, our business district as an area for growth. But if you look on the hazard map, you can see that that's the biggest flood area too. So I have significant concerns about what we would be doing in that. So making sure that if there's going to be development in that area further than there is now, that we're prioritizing the kind of development that's going to withstand the storms that are coming. It was just about a year ago, almost today, that we had a massive storm, just basically one ridge over in Monroe and Oxford, where roads, houses, buildings were taken out. That easily could have happened here, and it can happen here and any time at this stage. So I think there's a little bit of lacking of noting and the specificity of that. Not that it's completely empty, but I think it does need to be highlighted more. And I think obviously we heard that from other folks. And just to note on the process side, I guess, I would ask you, given the comments we heard tonight and also from the chairs of our Conservation Commission a couple of months ago about the process, and the potential to do it a little bit differently in a more inclusive manner. I understand that the Connecticut state statutes give this to the town planning and zoning body, but it seems possible that a subcommittee could be made that is a little bit more inclusive, and maybe you could speak to how it's done in other towns and if there are sometimes groups that are made that incorporate other bodies, so we're not just asking for feedback, but the actual POCD planning body is not solely the TP&Z commission, but perhaps a group that is inclusive of other members, so that we don't come to this stage where people feel, hey, yes, we were asked for some info, but it's not really considered in the way that we think is due.
Is that for the next POC process or this one?
What I would say, we can't go back at this, but I would say as a comment to this, I'm asking you to speak to that if it happens in other towns, and also perhaps it would be appropriate to put in a comment that for future planning, we'd love for this to be more, inclusive in this way. Because it only happens every 10 years, although my understanding is that it can be updated within the 10 years, so we're not limited to doing this every 10 years. If there were a note in this plan as an action step to say, form a subcommittee for future POCDs that is inclusive of these commissions, that would be an action step. That could be,
That could be the strategic planning committee in the future.
Yes, so.
Because that would, not to interrupt, but one of the reasons why the 2015 POCD had a bunch of action steps that didn't get done, as you've noticed, is because the TPZ is not in charge of any of that, really. It assigned things to conservation, economic development, et cetera. The only people who can actually follow up and make that happen are the people holding the purse strings and the decision-making on, are we getting a staff person there, or are we doing this, or are we doing that? And that's the Board of Selectmen. So that's what the strategic plan group meant to be as a committee, and it was guiding the budget process, because all of this goes back to the budget process. And that's probably why we won't do it more frequently than 10 years, because it's an expensive process. But we could certainly, once this back end of this thing is created, the Board of Selectmen could take it up at every one of their meetings.
Sure. Okay, and if you don't mind, I'm curious if you could speak to that question of other towns, if there are sometimes committees that go beyond the town planning commissions, how that might be done, or your perspective on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, sure. And also I wanted to mention on your first comment, I think that's the TPZ did not put them in any particular order, but I think the themes, but I think they were kind of thinking mainly from, their perspective, but I think that's a perfect comment for you all to say if you want to put them in a different order. I think that's a perfect suggestion for them to consider. I think, yes, other towns do all kind of different things. And some have a subcommittee of the TPZ because maybe in some cases it might just be the planning commission or something like that. I think I've been involved in almost every kind of situation that you can think of, from a full planning commission to a subcommittee to then like something more made up of a subcommittee of maybe some other various entities. I know that at a minimum, though, the process that we suggested and what I had suggested as a minimum was that we had these conversations with these other boards and commissions through what I called roundtable meetings. And we took them very seriously, as well as the discussions with other town boards other town staff, because I think it's very important to make sure that the plan is in fact implementable in the end over those 10-year period. I do think that at a minimum, you could have an action step that suggests that. I think there's an action step right now that was carried over but modified that talked about having a town planner. Also, I think implementation is something you should take very serious as well. Many towns also do form like an implementation committee. Maybe it's a strategic committee in this case. Sometimes it's a subcommittee of the TPZ. But I do think that I can't say how important that is, that you end up having those like maybe at a minimum, a yearly check-in, like taking a look at that implementation table, see what might be coming up for that town's budget, maybe have the meetings in like November or prior to the start of your budget cycle, so that you can see, oh yeah, we need to move this forward, or we need to remind the Conservation Commission that they need to update the open space plan. We need to get an extra budget for some zoning amendments that the plan calls for, something like that. So I do think that aspect as well is very crucial.
And just as a follow-up specifically on that implementation plan, the 2015 plan at the end has that appendix with the implementation plan, and it shows the assignment to each commissioner who's going to be doing what. I think, at least on the initial draft that we see, it's not there, but it was noted at the TPZ meeting that it would be included in a future, that these appendices were still coming. And so,
right. Well, the first two appendices, I believe, or maybe the first three, I'd have to look, are available because they're previous documents. But the implementation table is one, and again, it takes everything that's in the plan now, but it just assigns the responsible entity and the time frame. That is being worked on right now internally, and then the TPZ is going to consider that at their August meeting. But again, they're only going to be looking at that time frame and the entities, making sure that they're in good shape. But that will be available for the public hearing by the TPZ. And again, it's not a requirement of the plan. It's like that's why it's an appendices, and hopefully it's supplying just information rather than something that's controversial.
Well, Robert, just to clarify, to make sure I understood, the one that exists today is goals, actions, responsible entity, and time frame. Is that consistent with what you're describing is going to be in this one, or is this one
Yes,
going
it's
to be different?
exactly the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So-
those are based, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Well, are those specific to the strategies like 3, 2, 1 that are in these
Yeah.
subsections?
Yes.
All right, so a good chunk of my feedback was on
Yeah.
lacking that information in this plan, so I guess I could remove that?
Well, so this is the point I wanted to get to, if you don't
Yeah.
mind, Sheila, to
Please.
finish my thought on this.
Yeah.
So, when this was handed to us, as part of the state process, it was sort of considered substantially complete. That's sort of the term that's used. And I guess what I would suggest is that without this, even though what you've just said is it's not actually required, I don't think it's substantially complete.
Agreed.
I think it's such an important aspect of the way that one might look at this. Like, if I were to direct anyone to the 2015 plan, what I would say is go to that. And so, as a framework to what to look at. So in looking at this, it's a lot of pages, there's a lot of information. I would want people to go to that. And so I would suggest that what we received was not substantially complete, and that with that action plan, even if it's still in draft form, that would make it a little more substantially complete and much easier for us to look at and the public to look at. So I understand, because you clarified that it's not necessarily required, I get why it happened, but so I'm noting for future that I would like to have received it that way, because that is, I was
Me
making
too.
my plans that way.
And the appendices to reference data, because there's no
it's just
insight text.
When do
like,
we expect that?
in-text citations?
Well, the other appendices are available already on the website. I mean, we could coordinate with the town to make sure that you
Right.
get them sent
So-
to you.
Well, they weren't
but-
when we
Can I
got-
just
But-
note something about story maps? That's the website you're talking about, right? The
Is that-
report
would that be
appendix A
appendices
is
then?
not a clickable link. So it's there, it says there's a file, but I can't click it and open it.
You're
from
not able to, they might
April.
want to download it.
No, it's not clickable. It's not.
Either
It's like
way,
an-
It
we
might have
were
to do
not.
with your
The other
web
links are
browser. It
clickable.
might have to
It's
do
a
with.
note
No, the
for
other
future
ones
at
are
this point.
clickable. I
Okay.
just, I think
I
there's a
agree
problem.
with Steve that this is a note for the future. They might exist somewhere out there. We were not made aware that they are. We were told, just echoing
Well,
Steve's point.
we can get them to you. I
Yeah,
mean, again, I'm
sure.
not
Which
staff,
would be great.
so I don't know
No,
what you
understood.
receive, but.
Understand.
But we can certainly make them all of it where available to you.
Well, it's just that we're not having 65 days.
Yeah,
That's,
to do
that's,
that.
that's what it is. Because
We
we're on
need
a
65
time limited,
days.
there's some issues here. And because it only happens 10 years, there's not necessarily, in 10 years, it's probably not going to be us doing it. And so this is where if we have,
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, I
it wasn't
think-
us 10
Yeah, we
years
need
ago. It
like
might
an
have been a couple of you,
SOP.
but it wasn't me.
for this or something.
I mean, all the appendices are really just that they're appendices because they're supplemental information.
Sure.
Like the community profile and existing conditions, that whole document is summarized in chapter 2.
Yep.
But again, the more detailed information that maybe you might find interesting is attached. That has been a public document for a while, but we can certainly talk with the town staff to make sure you get copies of that. I believe the others are the survey results, and then.
Right, all those things are.
Yeah, and then the implementation table, again, it's only repeating the action steps, but it has the responsible entity, which I don't think the responsible entity should be a shock, but.
They're no,
but
but
it-
in
but it-
reading the document,
yeah.
my point is it would be helpful there, and because then what it
Sure.
says to me, when part of my comments for this is, in doing this plan, is it considered what is our staff capacity and who is going to do that? And so when I read this, I don't know if that's been considered because I don't see who it's assigned to, I don't see when it's going to happen.
Sure.
So at this stage, reading through it, is this reasonable? Is this all aspirational? Is it all theoretical?
Right, what's
But
the-
the implementation table connects that to the reality and the potential to do something.
And
So
that's like
that's
the
what would be
missing
helpful.
link,
That's
missing
it.
link of what is the purpose of this document? Is it just to sit on a shelf and check it off the list for a state, statute, or to implement? And that is a component that's
I mean,
missing for the usability
Obviously,
of it.
that's, something that I personally, as a planner, have, made clear to the TPZ and the town staff that it's very important to have the implementation table, so that's why we pursued that.
Thank you.
And then, once we knew that the goals and strategies and actions were kind of locked down, at least in draft form from the TPZ, that's when then the implementation can be put together. Some towns don't do the implementation table until after the plan is actually adopted, and then they do that kind of as like a next step. I don't, if you're familiar with like the consolidated plan for HUD, Community Development Block Grant process, where you have to do that plan and then you have to do like the yearly action plan. The implementation plan is kind of similar in fashion. And that it's, it's the perspective of like when the plan gets adopted, it's the perspective of that first year of like what is the view. The assumption would be that you would then have that implementation committee that would take a look at that, potentially mark off things that you've done, but then look and see if those entities maybe have changed or whether there's also with the time frame, whether that now has gone from short term that you need to push that out for long term. So again, while that is important, remember that the initial one that the TPZ would like to supply for this adoption is the snapshot of where we are today, and that could change as far as time frame goes. Again, the TPZ's been working on that. Obviously, this information can be shared with them that you would really like to see it. There is a meeting with them on the 25th. Hopefully, if they make their final edits or comments, then it will be their suggested document, and then it can be shared with you. I think maybe even an early draft could be shared with you as well. But it is being worked on internally. It's not because we gave the template, but again, that's something that the town has to decide on the entities as well as the timeframes. And I think your role to comment on that is very important.
So I have just I guess maybe it's a technical question. If there's a substantial amount of changes, what triggers having to start the having to start the notice period over? Like, we're saying that SCROG has it now. They have what we have, which does not include the appendices, et cetera. But if we, let's say the Housing Committee has made some suggestions and we do want to see them in POCD, and we're going to send that back, and then there's going to be substantial changes, let's say, to one of the sections. When does it trigger it so that we kind of have to go back to SCROG, we have to come back through the 65-day period again?
Well,
Maybe
you're
it
kind
never
of going
does.
into uncharted territory.
Okay.
But I mean, anything is possible. Just remember that if you don't, again, the TPZ will have to ultimately make that decision. The hope is that they have worked on a plan that they hoped, by having all these conversations with the different boards, getting some of your feedback, the hope is that maybe there is, some common agreeance.
Yeah.
With maybe some recommended suggestions of where your,
I mean, I do
your
think
issues
last
might be.
last time we had public hearings where the public could comment and Board of Selectmen members could comment, et cetera, before it was substantially completed.
Well,
I'm just wondering if
remember
we're going to trigger
the plan is not
substantial.
complete until the TPZ holds their public hearing after the 65-day. It's just, the substantial completion just means that, what that means is just that it means that the TPZ is happy with the plan.
Yeah, no, I
But that
understand,
doesn't mean that it's
because last
substantially
time
complete,
the
'cause-
document in its draft form was available for the public before a TPZ public hearing, before it got to that 65-day where it went to the Board of Selectmen. But that hasn't happened this time, so.
Yeah, I
so
don't know. I've never seen a town have that kind of process before, so I don't.
Public hearing by TPZ before sending
Yeah,
it?
because the state only requires one at the end of the
Oh.
process, so.
I guess we did something unusual last time then.
Yeah, I
think we had
mean,
2 public
was it
hearings.
like just a regular meeting and they allowed public comment?
No,
I
it's-
mean, again, you can do whatever kind of process you want as long as you meet the minimums that the state requires. I think that the TPZ felt that the sharing of the community vision statement, the themes, as well as all the goals, strategies, and actions all the way back on April 8th, and then making that publicly available from that point forward was the opportunity for everybody to begin to start making comments on those items. Again, many of them are carried forward from the existing plan. I would think that if something was found to be inconsistent now, then that might have, what's that mean about the 2015 plan? Because many of these things are carried forward. The hope would be that, you could find the commonality that was put together by balancing all the different priorities, and that with some tweaking and some suggestions on your part that you could move forward with that. Again, if you had some kind of finding that you asked the TPZ to reconsider something more substantial, we'd have to cross that bridge once we got past the 10th. We'd have to see what SCROG said. We'd have to see what you finally say in your recommendation letter to them. And then they could decide whether to ask for a further extension and come back to you and ask for, a additional budget to reconsider something specific, or whether that gets embedded into some kind of, maybe we'll reconsider that in another year as an amendment to the plan or something like that. I mean, I think with the housing, things are constantly, that's one of the things that's difficult with the POCD adoption, is that, like, for instance, the data we gathered, at the beginning of this year, and now it's like August, and a lot of times people are saying, well, there's new data on, the sale of houses, which is true, but, we can't keep updating it. You can certainly request that, or maybe say we'll come back in a year and make an amendment, but, those are things that you'll have to consider, and then we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there, I guess.
And that's the way we should approach this, in the interest of, again, keeping this as efficient and productive as possible. Let's talk about what changes we're considering. Let's talk about what we're actually thinking needs to be done, and then we can we can assess if there's a great big problem here. So, and I don't know that we've gotten deeply enough into that. You started it, you made some comments. I think that's kind of where we got to go with this, is at this point in time is, okay, what else do we have? For example, and I'll say next, I thought recreation was particularly lacking. Now, that could be simply you didn't receive a lot of information from those people who would represent the recreation. But, and the reason I say that is because there's mention made of at Pease Park, and actually it's only referred to as a leggy, but it's also known as Peace Park, which I think is an important thing just to make sure people understand if they're reading it. But that you make mention that there, we would like to improve and possibly put a splash pad in. But again, to Steve's point, not seeing it from an action item standpoint, it's literally a sentence. And that's something that the Recreation Department has indicated they want to aggressively go after grants for that, to be able to do some of those things. And so I felt like it should be raised up a little bit in terms of its prominence to allow that type of thing to happen. The country club, we spoke a little bit about the country club. In my estimation, we're far enough along the process now, so that even if we don't have our final documentation that they'll provide us in September, and we won't have that in time to deliver to you the change, or we might, because it'll be at the end of our meeting. But there's, that also includes, right now it's a 5 to 6 year plan. This is a 10-year plan. So it's almost as if that document, there's portions of that document that should be incorporated into this, specific to the country club. Because we've spent a year trying to develop a concept, which is a plan that's going to take a period of time. And those types of, that type of information, I think, is important to be incorporated into our plan of conservation and development. Those are two areas in particular that I felt just needed to be considered, and as I say, recreation as a whole, we could use more, just generally speaking, and I don't know that it speaks to that.
Well, if you know more now than when we had the spring meetings,
Right.
and definitely, and I would say being more specific would be really the best channel to go. As far as we suggest that this action step be included under 3.1, and then if it's related to the recreation, we do have a strategy that is set up to talk about improvements to the recreation department, facilities. So, just be more specific right there. And then related to the country club property, we've all been anxious to get some more information on the study, and what might be best is if there's maybe some kind of linkage to that, if that's available now, if there's a final plan or a draft plan, maybe there could be a link to those, that plan that's included.
So
I think the future land use plan tries to set that up by, because of the opportunity area that was identified for the country club site.
yeah, so that's a pretty good example. That's the CCW report that we have now. I happened to listen to the housing committee talk about wanting to see affordable housing there, and saying that so far in our discussion of the CCW, we don't have as much as they expected us to have. If the POCD also expects more than the CCW plan is going to have, that's where these plans are potentially not going to agree. So,
well, I'm not aware of the POCD having any expectations for affordable housing in their plan right now.
I didn't see anything specific.
So maybe that was just what
It talks
housing
about balancing it, but
wanted
there's
to
nothing
suggest that was
in there.
added. I think that was their concern, was that
Yeah.
they weren't
Well,
seeing
we
that.
haven't specifically indicated affordable housing in the concepts that we've been discussing. But again,
Yeah.
it's a concept, and
It
that's up
wa-
to us to
yeah.
determine if
And that's
that's
a
what we
great,
want.
yeah.
It was mentioned as
Right.
there's an affordability crisis, and so it was woven in, I think, to the narrative of our approach. But I don't know that that's a bad, we are actively working on
Right.
addressing that, and I do think that should be represented in the plan. We can and should talk if we want.
Well, that housing overlay piece,
Oh.
which was very specifically discussed in our CCW planning, the consultant there has mapped out for us that potentially, it's an overlay, that the Board of Selectmen would be the applicant in front of TPZ. So now we're getting into, we're close to advocating for something that's going to come in front of the board. But it has to be reflective in the POCD, otherwise they would have to alter the POCD if we're talking about doing something, right?
But there was mention of overlay zoning.
Yeah, there
in the
was.
There is a
POCD.
discussion about
There
the
is.
housing overlay zone, but it's not specific, but it says to, I think it says to consider, potential adjustments to it.
Yeah, so in the CCW planning, it's very specific to just that property.
Yeah.
It does, and we asked the question, does this apply everywhere? And they said no.
And I think TPZ should consider whether they need that to be really specific or not.
Yeah, and again, if you have that information, especially related to the country club site, that's the perfect thing that you could make suggestions to the TPZ, informing them that this is, what you now know, and you'd like to have this amended or added. Again, that's a wonderful type of consideration for you to include for them.
From my perspective, it would also be important that you also take a look at the language that you mentioned, because you're right, there's very specific language, it's consistent language in different places related to it's very basic. It's kind of what was before.
It's been a parking spot.
Exactly, and that's
Parking
kind of
place.
and that's what I said. I remember Chris mentioning that.
Yeah, and so
saying
we
that, there
definitely
was
were-
kind of a placeholder.
Yeah,
Don't
and-
get crazy about
yep.
it, because it's kind of a
And
placeholder.
we figured that since
So-
you would be supplying your comments by September, we were hopeful that, you would know more and that you could be very specific in how those three, because one is in, I think, housing, one is in open space, and one is in economic development.
Right.
So I think, if you know, as you know more now, you could be very specific on how that action step could be amended. And the action step should really be focused on what is your next steps for that.
And my sense is it does need to be somewhat broad, because yes, we are going to do something, we may need something very specific because we own that property, but we may also want to do zoning changes. EDC may want to put an
Right.
application for zoning changes in the business district.
And if you know that now, then that's what you could say, is that, you encourage a zoning amendment for that site, subject to the report or something like that.
So has EDC, do they have an economic development plan? I don't know if they shared a draft, or I haven't
I
seen
don't, I
anything.
think it's not so much of a plan of their, but their guiding, priorities,
Okay.
which are reflected in the first theme area under the economic development one. There's one about retention and expansion of existing businesses, supporting existing businesses, making improvements to the business district, related to the connectivity study and also the placemaking study. And then I think also the last one of theirs was, and again, some of this was moved forward and revised, but also connecting with the broader community that Woodbridge is part of, and linking with some of the business associations and things like that in the region to, to hopefully expand some commercial opportunities.
Right.
What else do we have?
Yeah, so kind of picking up from where you left off, Mika, and tying in something Maria said earlier. So the plan of conservation and development, we've talked a lot about, I think, some adjustments and attention we want to pay to the conservation piece. In terms of development, this is economic development and, all development broadly,
general.
right? So I ask you, the board, what you think about the potential, what I think is missing from this, but capitalizing on what we have, and we're so lucky to have, which are we could really invest in ecotourism and agrotourism, and we already have made great strides in agrotourism in this town with, I guess, Massaro, with Town Line Farm, and others, but I know there are some efforts with EDC and Coopop for making connectivity for biking, mountain biking, for hikers. I mean, to your point earlier, you called out what we look for as residents, birding, walking, whatever. I feel like we have such untapped potential to expand and grow that sector. like we could bring people from all over the state with West Rock, with the country club, with everything that we have. So
That speaks to the recreation piece, as I say. I
yeah,
think
so, but you spoke more about, which I wanted to piggyback off that, because I think you mentioned active rec in, but this piece.
I understand.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And
So
it
you
is.
agree?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Likewise.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
I do.
I don't
And-
want.
No,
you
please,
can keep
I'm
going.
done.
Yeah,
That
but to the point, this in the plan, the strategy 3.2.4, talks about maintaining and improving recreation, and I really think the word expand needs to be in there, expanding opportunities for recreation, and tying it into the economic potential of this town
Yeah.
too. And so that does connect, and this is where getting all those pieces and the themes to support each other, so they're not separate themes, but they're actually integrated, so that we're prioritizing sustainability and capitalizing on it in economic terms. So, absolutely agree.
And it is very important, I think, that we identify the tie-ins specifically, or emphasize, better word, emphasize the tie-ins, because that's what we go after grants for. It's like we've got a lot zip grant for our business district now. That's phase one, as far as I'm concerned. Phase two ties a lot of these things together. It expands the sidewalks onto the residential areas, not only the business areas. And it connects the trail systems so that people can go from the trail system into our business district and back, so.
And this might require liaison with the Regional Water Authority,
Right.
with Connecticut Deep,
To really expand it.
to really do it.
Make it like-
And those would be steps, like to create the partnerships, right? Which that takes time and intention. The other quick thing I want to note that I think was missing, well, the Woodbridge Park Association was mentioned in this plan. I serve on that board. I don't think the Woodbridge Park Association was directly consulted or contributed. You can correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't really matter, but the information in here is out of date. And I do think that the Woodbridge, we got a grant, a climate smart grant, and to the point I was trying to make earlier, that's managing Alice Newton Park as to promote climate resilience and to promote forest health for the betterment of our quality of life, of our people and natural systems. I think that should be reflected here. It's a 10-year climate resilience plan. Allison, you might be able to use that plan in your sustainable CT application for Monday and maybe get some extra points. I don't know. But anyways, I think
I'll put
that
them towards the April one.
I
I'm gonna try to not cram anything else.
over the weekend.
The rest of my week.
Anyways, I would like to see that reflected in the plan. I don't know if that's too detail oriented, but I think.
Is it too detail-oriented?
I mean, you can make whatever recommendations that you want. I mean, but again, be more specific. You can't just say we want more information on this or something like that, because again, we're getting the information
yeah.
from you. So just be specific. If you
Okay.
want to have an action step that says, in that discussion about the Woodbridge Park Association, if you want to have, say, continue to collaborate with the Woodbridge Park Association on their climate resilience plan or whatever it is. I mean, like that could be a action step that gets added. And I think there's a lot of great ideas that are flowing out here, which I think is, good for you to include. But just remember, there's also that implementation plan. So if you add an action step, we're going to have to make sure that there's a responsible entity. So you have to be thinking about that too, and then potential budget implications and things like that. And I'm fully supportive, understand of, and again, I'm not, I'm just a consultant, but as a professional planner, I fully support all the ideas you're saying. But I know from your perspective, you'll have to be taking into consideration implementation.
In my view, and the reason I keep mentioning grants is specifically because I agree with you.
Right.
And I'm thinking, what I want to do is things that I've learned we can get grants for, and there seems to be money available for, are what I'm focusing on in terms of being able to get that done. So I
Right.
agree. I don't think it's difficult to do that. I think it's good to know. So when we collect the data from each of the people who are inputting on it, to make sure that we do not only indicate what change you want, what change you're looking for, identify where it goes, identify who's responsible and, you know, the action item
Short-term,
that goes along
long-term,
with
that
it.
type of thing, yeah.
So that
Yeah.
so
And,
that it's complete.
I
We
mean,
did get
it's going
some
to be
good
especially
from-
helpful in the budgeting process, because a lot of this is capital improvements that budget is going to be very hard pressed. So it'd be great to do all these things with parks. And I remember 10 years ago, a 90-foot diamond was prioritized by recreation, and there was a whole plan to, you know, work with the community organizations to fundraise and make it happen.
Right.
And we don't have a 90-foot diamond today. I see that it's sort of dropped out of here completely. I don't see it at all. So, but what we can afford to, what we'd like to do and what we can afford to do are probably two different things. And, you know,
But it's
I'm a little wary of adding more things because this is already a lot.
Unless
I
you put it
agree,
out for
except-
long-term, you know, you can do that. And we did enlist, we did talk very specifically about grants, and we did link some of them, and we did put some generic language in so that if some kind of future grant comes up, that you could point to it.
Right.
But obviously, if you know something new about a grant or a project, let's get it in there.
To that point, I do have a question about one of your strategies on page 77, 1.3.4, Action A. You've used that regarding seniors, and you talk only about about Woodbridge Center. So I was just wondering, is that language limiting to that because of grants, or it seems to me that if you're talking about seniors and living in place and services for seniors, that you're probably also talking about the finance committee and other groups, that the future of this particular area is probably not limited to human services, I would think, but public-private collaborations that might come up between the town and private entities that are into this kinds of thing, because it's a big area that's going crazy because of the aging of America right now. And so I was wondering, is that intentionally limited to Woodbridge Center? Because that's what it reads. It just says Woodbridge Center in that particular line, so.
What page is
Well,
that?
just remember, it's not my plan. This is, and I know that you didn't mean it that way, but, you know, this is all information that we gathered from talking with the Human Services Director and also talking with the staff about the senior services. These were the priorities that we were given. But if you have others that you feel are warranted or that you know of, please feel free to make those suggestions.
Dave, there was
The action seems reasonable, but it just doesn't seem like it
It's
should only
limited.
be the action of
I
Woodbridge
agree.
Center.
And there was another example of that under open space where it calls out the Conservation Commission, you know, informing the Board of Selectmen, advising on open space. Yes, they do, but they're not the only commission that
I
does
just
that.
wonder why we limit it to Woodbridge Center in this particular action item, because
Well, that-
obviously they would be a recipient of that kind of thinking, but they're also, you know, there are new things coming and other.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly suggest that, or we could also ask the Human Services Director for further clarification.
No, I think that's when we should add, only because they don't necessarily look at it from a more global perspective. They're looking at it, we want the center to have more, you know what I mean? And that's all, they're not necessarily looking at it beyond that.
Well, that doesn't seem like a very good plan.
Well, I think, and I could be
I
wrong.
mean, if the plan is for the seniors, right, which is what this is talking about, to help seniors continue living in their homes or in suitable housing within Woodbridge. So that's what the action is about. It's for the seniors. Why do we worry about?
All I'm saying is that if I was in their shoes, I would be thinking of it from my world, and my world is the Woodbridge Center.
I get it.
Not necessarily so,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
I completely agree.
It should be a generalized thing, though, right? When it comes out in the plan, you should just take Woodbridge Center out of there because they're obviously part of it.
Right.
And there may be other people who would be part of it.
I understand what you're saying now, and I agree.
That's all I'm saying. I wasn't saying that it's inappropriate.
Right.
I was saying that it's,
Yeah.
it shouldn't, we
Should be
didn't
more-
want a plan to be limiting. And to that another nitpicking that I do so well, although I must say, I really like what my younger colleagues have said so far. I'm
So that
in
rules
support
me.
of their ideas because
That rule
they'll
me.
be here to see them taken in.
So are you
taken
ruling
action.
anything I said out? Is that what you're saying?
Younger.
Said younger.
All younger.
It's all relative.
Younger is younger, me.
That's an important distinction.
Page 76 on Action E on Strategy 133, 3.3. This is a weird one to me, and I know how it got in here, but we're talking about a 10-year plan. And item E ends up with updating opportunity housing zoning regulations and pursuing a targeted number of new housing units over the next 20 years. Why on earth in a 10-year plan are we referring to over 20 years? I think that just, to me, that makes no sense whatsoever. And I was watching the discussion that led to this, and one person who introduced this idea had just said, I read the previous 10-year plan, and it's completely outdated, it's worthless. And then puts in a 20-year piece into this plan. Having read a 10-year plan that considered to be completely outdated and worthless, if I read this, I could say, well, okay, you know, this is a 10-year plan. We've got a 20-year, a 20-year timeline here. On year 18, I may get started on that. I mean, you know, it's like it's not going to survive. If it's in the 10-year plan, it shouldn't say anything about 20 years. Period. I think that's just wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but
So this is
Just to
an
clarify
example.
on that, I'm sorry, I mean, again, you can make that comment, but, you know, this is a summary of the Housing Committee's goals, and, you know, they personally are suggesting that because, that the housing targets that they have are, in fact, a 20-year, so it's not like this is just a POCD.
So this is a good example of, that's not in our affordable housing plan now, that's already filed with the state. It's not in our strategic plan. It's here, but the Board of Selectmen hasn't seen it, and so we have to submit the housing plan to the state. The affordable housing plan is really the Board of Selectmen's plan. They have recommendations, and I'm very eager to see them, and we may in fact have that as our goal once the Board of Selectmen sees it. But it's here already as if the Board of Selectmen has seen it, and we haven't. I'm not familiar with any of
Isn't it
that.
guidance, though? I mean, it doesn't have this specific target, doesn't it? What page is that
I don't think it
on?
does.
It doesn't have a target, it just
Page-
references
page
20
70.
years.
And you've also
references
got
20 years.
I mean, it says
Yeah.
explore others. It just says explore other
Well-
ideas to encourage housing.
Right,
I
and
mean,
in your
this-
C, it's got 80 to 120% AMI households. So these do seem very specific, and I don't know, that it might match what's in the draft of what they want to update the affordable housing plan to be, but I haven't seen that. And I don't think our the one that's on file with the state doesn't get that specific. It's not my memory of that being that specific, so. I just want to caution that you have the horse in front of the cart, or
Yeah, I
cart
mean,
in front of the
Yeah.
horse here.
I'm just critical of some of this because I don't think it really represents data. I watched the meeting that that they threw these numbers out because they were getting ready to come to talk about the POCD, and there was absolutely zero attention to anything that resembled data. And so there were numbers coming all around. This has been sanitized in here to remove some of the outrageous numbers and make it more general, which is a good thing because I think your goal with the POCD was not to pin things down to specific box checking, but really to more, as you said, a little bit make it more generalized. But you know, I think a lot of these, unlike your data, which actually has some footnotes, there isn't anything that's footnotable in here, nor is there any indication that any of this stuff is achievable or necessary, or there's just no data.
Along the lines of what you said in regards to the Woodbridge, or the Woodbridge Center, if you removed over the next 20 years.
I think we should. It's not a, it's not a 20-year plan.
It doesn't change what the intent is in that.
It doesn't change what they intend. But I think the reason that the 20 years stayed in there is because before there was an outrageous number associated with it that needed at least 20 years to think about, because it was projecting about a third as much housing as we have achieved in the last 241 years to happen over a 10-year span.
The rest of it I don't see as needing necessarily footnotes. It just indicates plans or goals or things of that nature.
Well,
but it doesn't, like even the 80 to 120% AMI.
Yeah, that may need some research.
Well,
I don't know where that comes from, because I haven't ever seen that committee actually reference any specific research of any sort.
80 to 120% AMI is what the state uses to identify different levels of affordability. That's.
Oh, yeah, I thought that was.
Yeah, that's not specific to anything. Okay. That's just a reference.
Yeah. Okay, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. I was only referencing the 20 years.
I understand. Go on.
Well, I'm curious, just in the interest of time, since I know we all have I've got 4 pages of notes. Sounds like Andrew's got plenty of notes. I'm wondering, in terms of process, at the next meeting we will, make a recommendation whether we want to reject, accept, or provide notes. I'm wondering about doing a compilation of notes so that we can have specific recommendations that we don't necessarily need to vote on. I would like us all to be able to include the comments we have, because ultimately my understanding is this is going to go to TPZ and they're going to do with it what they will. Essentially it's going to be theirs to include our suggestions or not. So rather than like us eventually commenting more on each other's comments, I'd like for us each to be able to combine, to send all of our comments, our edits, our recommendations, and then it's up to them to deal with it. When as a whole document we might say, hey, we suggest rejecting this and doing more work on it, or we suggest rejecting it and here's our comments on it. But just so that we don't, because I'm sure we could go for hours on each other's comments, and I do want to hear them, but I'd love to see them written and submit them and we can have some more discussion at the next meeting.
To that end, I don't think we should wait until the next meeting to submit them.
We don't have to wait till the next meeting to submit them.
No, just to Allison specifically, so that we can start to compile them and put something together that resembles a conglomerate of everything that we've discussed, or everything that you've submitted, and then we can start identifying a means by which we can put together a deliverable document. But that way, next time we meet, we'll have that. We'll have correct.
I can send something out for you.
Yeah. So I would say if we take,
Right, not the third. The third is just the public hearing.
Right.
the third is just a public hearing, correct?
Okay, so what I'm suggesting is that we don't try to vote on
Maria, let me not make a promise on that, because you never know what comes up between now and then that we may need to vote on.
I won't be
But it
here
won't
on the
be.
3rd, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, believe me, it's intended to be just the public hearing, correct?
I guess ultimately what I'm suggesting in terms of process is just making sure that all of our comments are submitted and we're not sort of voting on someone's comments being included in our feedback. I think all of our feedback should be seen by TPZ. So that ultimately we're providing all of our comments to that. In the similar way that we've been providing to our consultants for the country club process throughout. We've been providing at various stages our bits of feedback. I think we would all have that, and rather than trying to vote on that or spend hours discussing it, when we've had a conversation, I think there is a moment where we need to say we support or don't support this document going forward, but I think we should be able to offer all of our feedback without filtering it, per se.
I'm sorry, I just want to mention something, that if you do it that way, you may have some things that may conflict between each other. So that is going to be confusing to the TPZ. As a citizen, you could submit your individual comments, through the web link. You could do that. But if I could encourage you to have like a consolidated list of the main things that you feel.
That's the
need to be
intent.
changed.
And I'm sorry if I didn't catch what you were just saying. The reason to combine these is so that we can do exactly what you just indicated, is so that if there are conflicts, we identify what we're gonna do with that.
Yeah.
You know, we
Because otherwise the
collaborate, we
TPZ will be
identify what, you
confused
know,
as
how
to
we,
what
how we get
direction to
around
go.
those types of
So
things.
Procedurally, we would have that discussion of the conflicts and narrow it down on the 10th. And then how would we know whether or not to reject it?
By midnight.
Because we wouldn't know what TPZ would accept or not,
Let's
right?
put it together.
Okay.
Let's get the information to us within a week,
Yeah.
okay? Let's get the information, sooner you can do it, the better. Get the information to us. Once we put it together, we'll identify, we're just gonna take the information and put it together.
That's what I'm saying, what we can do, right,
Then we-
because the problem is not having a meeting on emails or back and forth, it's
Correct.
commenting on that. So if you each individually send me your feedback, I can put it all together. It'll probably be duplicates of things, if not, we'll see what there's contrasting, and then the final document, I could send, if each one of you can respond back to me individually to the final document if I'm missing anything or lost one of your comments.
Once everything's put together, we can send it out to everyone, and at that point in time, you can see what's conflicted or what's, you know, what people think, so.
I guess then my question is, when we vote on the 10th,
We have to vote on the
Okay.
10th.
so we won't necessarily know when we vote if TPZ will be integrating our comments.
No, we won't know until they decide.
Until they do.
We're voting to send
We're
stuff to
voting
We're
to
just- This is
send-
just to
okay.
send the information. We won't, that's,
Yeah.
no matter what, that's the case.
Okay.
Robert, I guess I'm suggesting this in part because my understanding is we have this 65-day review period, and we are reviewing it, but so is SCROG. Now, SCROG could have recommendation that conflicts with our recommendations. We might have recommendations within us that slightly conflict, but of course, as has been pointed out, this is a plan of conservation and development, and there's going to be some inherent friction. You're going to say we want to do development and we want to do conservation. There's some natural friction with there, so I really don't see an issue with having suggestions that, unless they're like really explicitly, change these words differently, I think it's reasonable to have comments from all of us as part of that. And my understanding of the process is that after these 65 days, they receive those comments and then they have to decide how to integrate it before they do their public hearing. Because it can take, we could spend a lot of time and we have a lot of feedback. I'm just trying to make a process for us that's reasonable. I don't plan to submit 4 pages at this point of comments. That's what I started with. I'm gonna pare that down of some suggestions and things, and understanding that
Agreed.
fellow selectmen will have some pared down comments as well.
Noted.
So that's what I'm sort of suggesting as a process for us, because I know we could go through it all, and it could be a lot to do that. Maybe that doesn't seem reasonable, but
No, it does.
that's
I
what
mean,
I'm-
again, just try to be, positive and think about
Absolutely.
additional benefits also from your perspective, like you were talking about, things that that they may not know related to the country club site or new grants or, things that might be coming up with housing. Be, positive in those types of things. And you can combine them. I just wanted, you might be able to see them if they get narrowed down. Maybe it'll be obvious that everybody is complimenting each other and that you do have a couple page list of recommended suggestions. But I was just cautioning you that if there might be competing issues and you might recommend something that then somebody else says we don't have the budget for that and it could be problematic. But maybe just put your comments out there. We'll see where they are. And then you can decide how to move forward with them.
Can I ask you a little bit more of a specific question? So I'm looking at page 72, where we're in maintain quality community infrastructure systems, and there's a section on water and sewer, which is, really important to question of housing development, right? But it's also everyone in town benefits from. So we had some very specific language in the strategic plan about some next steps regarding water and sewer expansion. It's not here. Is it helpful to just cut and paste it back in for you, or was it considered and rejected or not included for a reason? I don't want to go through the trouble of bringing it back up if you already said, no,
Can you be
we're
more
not doing it.
specific, and I might recall, like, what
Yeah,
the
so there's a
conversations were?
section, or strategy 12, which is really the only strategy that this board substantially changed from the strategic plan, the prior one. And we had a series of steps we wanted to do regarding the water supply. For example, how would it increase withdrawal of groundwater, impact aquifer and existing wells? We intended for that to be studied. It's not, maybe that's too granular, but shouldn't that be, I mean, it's the kind of thing that TBZ needs to be aware of. That kind of data would probably be very helpful. They haven't asked us to fund a study to do that. Quite honestly, that's professional services. We don't have it in the budget right now. But do you want me to just add it back in where I think it should go, and then that's a consideration for them?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Should be an
All
action-
right.
it should
Do
be
you
an
think
action
that's something that
in
would
that.
be
Yeah,
worthy of
absolutely.
adding, because you might
Agreed.
need to get a grant or something for that
Yeah,
study?
I mean, almost everything in the strategic plan would, like, we were pretty economical with our document, but, I mean, I'm literally just gonna look at the two and just compare, so.
I think that's a great idea.
Is that helpful?
I do.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, positive
Only if it's gonna be
suggestions-
helpful.
Positive suggestions that you
Yeah.
feel would
Yeah.
make the plan better,
Yeah,
that you
because
feel
we,
comfortable with, I think is perfect.
okay, thank you.
We're all okay? Any other comments, any other thoughts?
Just one quick thought. Core forest should be represented in natural resources and biodiversity assessments. These were way too narrow in scope. So I just needed to get that off my chest.
Heard.
And
I'm sure we'll see it on your notes.
yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
That's our last agenda item. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Wow.
Motion made.
That was close.
Thank you.